Good afternoon, all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show, and I'm your host, Sal Greco. Thank you all for tuning in. If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like, share, subscribe button, hit that notification button as well. If you're watching us on Rumble, hit that like, hit that Rumble button. And if you're watching us right now, live streaming on X, please hit that repost button and share this out to all your friends. And some of your friends, unfortunately, are in the low information bubble, so we need to get them informed. So if you could do that for us, we'd greatly appreciate it. But there's been a ton of news, right? And I'm just going to set the stage here, because currently all these unions, Detective Endowment Association, a couple other unions, police department wide are endorsing the New York City mayor, the small-time venal criminal himself, Eric Adams, right now at City Hall. So the one union that's missing right now is the PBA, and it's rightfully so, because as you know, his police department, his police commissioner right now, Jessica Tisch, one of many failed police commissioners underneath him, is trying to terminate over 30 cops using the candidate assessment division against them, where they approved these cops. They're saying some were criminally convicted, they should have never been in, but yet they passed them through, and then they got to the street. They're actually active duty cops as we speak, some of them, and they effected arrest, and they have no issues on the job. Say what you want. This was 2 years ago that they got on, and now all of a sudden they said to them, "Oh, we're sorry, we should have never passed you, so we need to terminate you." Now, using that logic, we should go back 30 plus years and terminate John Shell, but that's another story. So using this, they now used an inspector, this guy, Terrell Anderson, who's the CEO of Candidate Assessment Division, and he used him as a scapegoat, much like the Quatisha Epps incident, where they used Paul Saraceno as the scapegoat because he was the chief. So if we use a scapegoat, that would get, the pressure off the real problem, which is an institutional problem. It's been going on for quite a while. Okay. That is with that lawsuit and that ongoing issue. Then we had last week, we had Serena Townsend on, who represented 4 chiefs, 4 executives that were filing lawsuits against the administration and Eric Adams personally for all kinds of misdeeds and retaliations, and basically running the police department kind of like what you've heard here on the Files Unfiltered, a criminal enterprise, right? And it was 4 chiefs that were highly decorated, highly respected. I understand some people have personal issues. I don't divulge or dive into people's personal feelings. I look at facts. So on the merits of those lawsuits alone, that is really bad for Eric Adams. Then we find out that Anthony Miranda, he had his sheriff academy, and apparently the firearms and tactics training for his deputies, those guys didn't have any certifications. So another blunder on Eric Adams. Then he came to Fort Lauderdale to go to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. Mind you, we don't know exactly who paid. I know his campaign manager, Todd Shapiro, one of his advisors, Todd Shapiro, was saying, well, it's a campaign expense. Who paid for the NYPD security? Because that's no one wants to discuss that. He came on there, and then he was a part of some clout-chasing event, and here are the pictures. Some clout-chasing event with the Fort Lauderdale Young Republicans, who some guy named Tony Delgado, or A.K. Latino Wall Street, apparently was the true head of this, and everyone's denying they know each other. The Fort Lauderdale Young Republicans don't know Tony. The West Palm Beach ones don't know the Fort Lauderdale ones. Broward County Young Republicans don't get along with these. And Miami Young nobody knows each other, but yet they've all been all over social media with their own events. But this was a clout-chasing event that had people there that were supposedly going to donate to Eric Adams. They live in Fort Lauderdale. What are you doing even getting involved in this? And, of course, I believe that some people that were going there were trying to look out for their investments in New York City, meaning real estate. Once again, Eric Adams is the mayor for billionaires. So, and that was a fiasco. Now Tony Delgado went online and said he's an independent, because clearly you can't have an event as a Republican for an independent. So that would just not look good. And then this week, just when Eric thinks, okay, he's dropped in the polls, he's last, like I've been telling everyone, he's dead last, and there really is no shot for this guy. Then yesterday is this bombshell lawsuit dropped by John Scola for Tom Donlin, the former police commissioner, as I like to say, and John and Eric like to say, the police commissioner name only. And it is a bombshell. This guy claimed all the stuff that we were saying here. He is now the 5th executive to back this up. The 4 chiefs last week, and now as the former police commissioner, Tom Donlin. And he filed a civil RICO lawsuit with the Southern District of New York through John Scola. And it's pretty damning what he wrote in there. I mean, here, this is in one of the articles, I believe, in a Gothamist. The lawsuit, which was filed by Donlin's attorney, John Scola, accuses Adams and department officials of committing numerous crimes, including wire fraud, mail fraud, and obstruction of justice. It also accuses senior NYPD officials of enriching themselves and their friends and associates by awarding unearned raises, inflated pensions, promotions, and unchecked overtime, which is something that Quatisha Epps made that original claim about the same exact things. And here, this is also in the article, and this is hysterical. Kaz Daughtry told Donlin he came up with the idea, which was the stopping the prostitution ring on Roosevelt Avenue, and he called it a dream. And actually, I was going to read this. So on pages 129 to 132 of Thomas Donlin's civil RICO lawsuit, Donlin details how Kaz Daughtry, who was playing bingo yesterday while this all went on, by the way, it's hysterical that guy is a clown. Kaz Daughtry approached him one day with what he called a dream, the creation of a flashy new NYPD task force. But as Donlin makes abundantly clear, this wasn't about public safety or strategic policing. Instead, it was nothing more than a short-term reactive enforcement blitz driven by media optics and Daughtry's personal obsession with publicity, not actual crime fighting or intelligence gathering. Donlin explicitly states that Daughtry had zero experience in running a task force, no operational leadership, no supervisory history, and no qualifications whatsoever to launch such an initiative. Yet this fantasy was funded anyway, not with private donations, not with earned merit, but on the backs of city taxpayers. We should all be lucky to have our personal vanity projects turn into city-funded dreams. That in a nutshell describes a lot of what was going on, and there's more. I mean, look at this. That was the video of him. Look at this with the big one.
I told you I was going to win. We outside of Melrose Senior Center. I just got bingo. Now I'm out of here.
That's unbelievable. And another part, on page 135 of Thomas Donlin's civil RICO lawsuit, Kaz Daughtry would run to his political benefactors, ensuring his management was never questioned. In plain terms, Donlin confirms what many of us have been saying for years. Daughtry operated like a man-child, propped up by the unchecked protection of Jeffrey Maddrey and Eric Adams, political handlers who shielded him from accountability at every turn. And that's my buddy Ellie Evans, who's stating this on X. He had a lot of different excerpts of it. But here's the best part. This is in the city. And remember, we know this to be the Crumbs crew and the Consofrito crew. But the Crumbs crew has Tim Pearson, who very infamously stated, "Where's my crumbs?" That is not how they got their nickname. So in the city, Greg Smith wrote this article, and he states right here, Donlin makes allegations against another longtime Adams ally, Philip Banks, whose home was raided and phone was seized by the FBI and the city department investigation back in September of 2024. Donlin claims Banks showed up at police headquarters at One Police Plaza on November 6th, the day after Donald Trump was reelected, to lobby for a pass on his investigations. Banks was heard to say, quote, he, Adams, is getting a pass now. What about me? The lawsuit claims. Of course, Banks is saying everything is a lie. It's always a lie with that guy, an unindicted co-conspirator. Everything's a lie with him. But so now that's going to be that other nickname. What about me? Where's my crumbs? What about me? These are the people Eric Adams puts in charge. So with all of this now that I've kind of set the table, I'm going to bring on none other than the former president of the Guardians Association and a civil rights attorney that has numerous cases against the New York City Police Department, and that's Eric Sanders. I know you can't help but laugh. He said, what about me? Where's my crumbs? I mean,
you know, it's funny listening to all this stuff. I can remember all these people coming up, except for Cass Dorothy. He hasn't been around long enough. But all these guys, I remember them. Banks's father, his father's a lieutenant. You know, it's just sad what's going on.
I honestly,
predictable, but it's predictable.
Yeah, and that also shows that in a separate part of this, today there was a hearing for the Senate the Senate committee to now bring forth to the Senate for an actual confirmation hearing of Emil Bove, the guy who's personally responsible for having Eric Adams walk the streets right now when he's a venal small-time criminal. And right here, it said right here, this is the article from the Times, and I posted this myself. Emil Bove ordered the DOJ to let this venal criminal Eric Adams out, right? And then he just got passed through the Senate and basically just the Republicans. And it shows that the Republicans are capitulating not to get chastised on Truth Social by someone, because this guy is unqualified, and he basically set up not only Eric Adams isn't getting his criminal charges got dismissed, and then all future or any pending federal investigation has been paused. Thank you to Emil Bove. But yet here's his quid pro quo. You're going to be a judge. He was never a circuit judge. He doesn't even live in New Jersey. Now he's going to be a judge in New Jersey. This is crazy, and it all relates back to the same thing that we're talking about. So that's on a side note on top of everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, you know, the thing is that people want to build confidence in the system, and then when things like this happens, you know, it gets people to have no confidence in the system. It's a two-tier system, those for us and those for others.
That clearly is what's going on here. So I figured we'd probably start, and I'll get to the other part with Donlin, and we'll get your take on all of that, because some of it, I mean, there's claims in there that, I mean, like the Banks thing, that's clearly right in line with what we all know. But I think he mentioned Quatisha Epps, and I think Epps should be actually his best witness, because she claimed the very things that he was claiming. But first, the unions right now are sitting at City Hall or wherever it is that Eric Adams having his press conference, and yet Eric Adams' NYPD is trying to terminate 30 cops right now and use an inspector as a scapegoat. And that right there is the scene there right now. So you were very adamant about things on X. You've called out virtually the entire administration. Also, the soccer mom known as Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch. So what can you say about all of that? Because there's a lot that you've uncovered, especially with the candidate assessment division and how they're trying to scapegoat Terrell Anderson, and no one's trying to take accountability, like the chief of personnel, John Benoit, or Tanya Kinsella, or anyone up there in the administration.
Or the commissioner themselves, who ultimately approves all these things. I mean, look, you know, I don't represent, so just a disclaimer, I don't represent Terrell Anderson, the inspector, right? But when I'm sending out tweets and things that inform the public about what's going on, it's about the right thing. It's not whether I represent someone. It's time to enlighten the public about things that really go on in the police department. This candidate assessment division has always been problematic, even when I came on the job. And I can guarantee you, probably since 1607, before the police department even started in 1645 with the Dutch rattle watches, and you could look that up. I actually wrote about that before. The problem is the agency itself is built on corruption. It's just, that's the way it is. The screening process screens in who you want and who you don't want. And I can guarantee that if you ask, and the problem with the mainstream media, this is why I do your podcast, and I don't necessarily give interviews to other people, is because they won't test the department narrative. For example, I said any testing methodology, when you go and you make assessment of candidates, must pass that uniform guidelines of the employee selection process, which is a 1978 case called Griggs Power, Supreme Court case, to make sure that it's a valid assessment, it's business related, and it doesn't discriminate according to race, gender, national origin, age, disability. Right there in black and white. Guaranteed, if someone were to challenge the police department's version and say, well, you're blaming Anderson, show me what standards you use to make assessments of candidates. They can't show you. It becomes people's personal opinions. That's what it boils down to, just like these psychological assessments. You know, I keep hearing this thing about these psychological examination. I'm telling you, when I went through the process myself, I thought it was really a psychological. Now I did the research on it, and by the way, I've settled cases against the NYPD for this very process. There is no such thing as a police psychological examination. It's not forensic in nature. It's essentially a clinical examination. Tell me how you feel, whether it's a CPI, the Minnesota personality test, the MMPI-2, which version, if they're still doing a house tree person test, it's all the same thing. It's basically, I want to see how you feel and how you respond to these circumstances. Then you sit down with a department psychologist. 9 times out of 10, it's not a licensed psychologist. It's someone who's still in school and they're getting ready to take the examination so they can become licensed in the state of New York. They have a conversation with you, and then they make assessments. And invariably, when you see these declining candidates, they're not mature. They show a poor response. They show poor control. They show this. They show that. It's all value judgments. It's not based on any true assessment. They don't even comply with the municipal police training standards that's in the state of New York, which, by the way, also has to be in compliance with the uniform guidelines. They don't follow it, and no one from the media challenges them on this.
No, and the other part is that they keep. So I saw the original. We saw the original article that was written about this whole incident, and it was basically kind of used as a hit piece because someone you represent was brought up, and that's Emilio Andino. And full disclosure, that's the nephew of Letitia Epps, who was a lieutenant. That, as I mentioned before, she was in Jeffrey Madry's office, and we know that she's in the center of basically. She knows the inner workings of this entire Crumbs crew and Consafrito crew. So she is at the center of this. So they were going after him there. And of course, one of the people there was Martin Matarazzo, who ordered him to be evaluated and suspended him while she was hanging out with a mob associate and self-admitted criminal. So this whole thing, and this is when you filed this in there, and I saw that the New York Post put this up. So it's a slight hit piece because it mentions Andino and then it mentions Anderson, and they're trying to. The article is trying to make Terrell Anderson a scapegoat, as he's the sole problem with this. He was the one that caused this, and yet we have learned even through Epps that can't be, because they made Paul Saraceno the fall guy in her situation, when very clearly now, as we've learned with all these other lawsuits, they're all piling up. It's Madry, it's Eric, it's Banks, it's Pearson. Those are people calling the shots. In this one, I believe Benoit, who's the chief of personnel, is also involved. So I don't know if you could give us your take on all that, because your client was mentioned in that in a hit piece, basically, and Anderson was made out to be the one guy who did everything. It's all his fault.
I find it all fascinating because when you line it all up, it doesn't make any sense. Okay. They act like this is some new concept. And like I said, I'm sure people waiting for Epps to bring her lawsuit, which I haven't brought it. And I've had this conversation with several media personalities. I said, When are you going to bring it? I said, soon. Very soon. What that means, you don't know. I'm just going to drop it. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to detail with receipts, as they call them, right? Pictures, text messages, other things that we have that's going to establish that these parties were engaging in various forms of corruption, along with the sexual harassment, all the other things that was done to her, with Madre going all the way back to City Hall, Cass Daughtry, the whole cast of characters, John Shell, Kinsella, Leslie Traynor, and that's just a few names.
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing all these things come out, and some of the things that my client can talk about will link back to these 4 lawsuits. So we're going to review all these lawsuits. We're going to have a lot to say about things that were said, including these promotions, the contracts, which we know we have some evidence to show that exists, even though the department kind of, let's just say, made 2 other books disappear. We still have 1 left, so we can prove certain contracts. Her red book is gone, which would have had more information about when she worked. Her phone record is going to help establish that she was actually working, even at Police Plaza at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I know plenty of people, there's no way she could have been working. We have pictures of her at 2 o'clock in the morning in police headquarters working, meaning she should get paid for it, and she wasn't paid for it, on vacation. So, there's a lot of people out there giving all these opinions, but as this go further and further along, guess what? Now you're starting to see, wait a minute, I guess Epps was really being forthright. Sure she is. Oh, the overtime, read about that. She created overtime slips. The original ones disappeared through no fault of her own. And the case law is very clear. If you're recreating documents to help establish that you work, guess what? The United States Supreme Court in 1945 or 1948, I put the case up, says that's perfectly fine under Fair Labor Standard Act, the FLSA. And then under New York State labor law, guess what? That is perfectly reasonable. And you could even use testimony too. And you know who the burden is to maintain records? The employer, not the employee.
That's right. And their records are MIA, but apparently it's all Paul Saraceno that was running an entire operation, because they used.
Let me tell you, Sal, I had a disciplinary case in the trial room. It dealt with that very issue. And this time it dealt with UF-28s. That was a Joe Ramirez case.
Oh, yes.
The senior policeman. And see, when people think, it's just he giving his opinion, and I don't give an opinion. I give it based on facts. And then you know what I do? Unlike other lawyers, I put up the documents so you can look at them yourself. You can read them. I don't hide anything. I believe in full transparency. In that case, I got the senior police administrative aide to admit in Manhattan North Narcotics that not only were these records missing, they were filling them out, weren't correcting them, making sure and verifying them for at least 14 years. Whoops. The witness backfired against the police department. Of course, he wasn't found guilty of that charge of the person being AWOL. I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is common stuff that go in the police department all the time. Missing documents, corrected documents, filling the documents. It only became a whole big thing because I'm still trying to figure out how these allegations even started. And to me, now that I'm learning more and more about these things as infighting, it's more about the infighting than actual corruption. They're throwing around corruption all over the place. But meanwhile, there's a bunch of allegations. You know who can talk about it, though? Quatisha Epps. She can talk about it. She could talk about how they did the favors, how they promoted certain people, how the DV chief I just posted the other day, how she got promoted, how Donlin didn't even know what the hell was going on when he first came in, how they was using a rubber stamp on the Caban and on the Donlin. Like I said, she's the one who knows about what was going on. That's why they try to undermine her, because she knows the secrets.
And that's why they would come out with these hit pieces trying to go after the nephew, her credibility, attack her. But yet the stuff she knows and the stuff she has put out there, at least, publicly, none of it has been refuted. The fact, like the CRT team. So, this the other day.
Oh, you mean the drones and the drones, yeah. the Cass Daughtry show? They did the drones contracts to make him look good. And John Shell, to get him to the chief of department, chief patrol, he's damaged goods. We'll just come up with the CRT, which is just another version of street crime when I was on. It's just, and they're doing the same outrageous bullshit they were doing back then.
And that was that we found out that not only was he put in charge for the CRT team. It was created for John Shell because, as we know, he did kill someone on the job. And again, I keep telling people the grand jury minutes of that entire incident are MIA. So either they're not there or they never happened. But it was a $2.5 million civil lawsuit that was a settlement off of that because of that incident. And we learned that he's a tax cheat on top of it. So this John Shell, who should have never, ever have been a chief of patrol, CRT was created solely for him to give him something to get that third star, and Kaz Daughtry to have something, because it's hard to give a guy a commissioner job and say, well, what are you doing here, other than what we see now, which we now know he does videos on social media at taxpayers' expense.
Well, see, that's the thing what the taxpayers don't realize, and the media really haven't challenged these people on this stuff. These are self-promoters. That's all they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're from Eric all the way down. They're self-promoters. That's all they do. They self-promote at the taxpayers' money. If you could even get into the construction course of how they rebuilt Police Plaza, these offices, furniture, oh my God, they wasted millions and millions of dollars. And with Andino, since I want to talk about, since you mentioned Andino earlier, you know what's ironic is that he's damaged goods according to the police department. Meanwhile, he's still, even while in the investigation, even while suspended, still score over 93 and 95 with his third trimester, with basically a couple of weeks to study by himself. And he passed that BS hair test. It doesn't mean anything. It's not even certified. He passed all qualifications, yet they still terminated him. This is a waste of taxpayer money because why? Tisha's not going to be held responsible for this. Madry's not going to be held responsible for this. Caban's not going to be held responsible. Kinsella, who's got a mouth like a sewer, is not going to be held responsible. None of these people are going to be held responsible. You know who's going to be held responsible? The taxpayers. And Correct. They're going to walk away from this litigation that's going to go on for at least 10 years or more. Guaranteed. Because these cases they're generating, it's going to generate for years and millions of dollars in settlements and legal fees. And it's a disaster.
Yeah.
And I normally don't comment on the politics, and they'll probably say, oh, he's just jealous of Eric Adams. No, and I've never been jealous of him. He never beat me at anything. I can tell you that. And people don't know history knows that's true. The bottom line is total mismanagement. And what's the point? What's the point? Get the same thing we had before? Or I can clean everything up. Now, clean up what? We're gonna put you in charge of hanging out again, and then put all these same bunch of clowns. There's different clowns in this time. Come on, it's enough already.
Yeah, I think New York City is showing that they're tired of the clown show. He just goes back to the well. He's got the low information group around him. He's got Crumb's crew, Conso Frito crew, now Sober Garden crew, and they're gonna just go over there and act like, oh, look at all these people here. Meanwhile,
Sal, I just want to address this chat person real quick. Right? It says, I like this podcast, but overall, where were these guys when they were on the job? So now, if people really know the history of me, you know what they'll know? That I was talking about police corruption when I was a cop, long before I became a lawyer. And I used to chase the guns too. So believe me, I'm talking from experience on both sides, not just a chatter, not no seat person. Any one of my partners will tell you, nah, he used to jump the fence and do all that stuff. So trust me, I've been talking about this police corruption long before many of you people came on the job. And see, I have a little bit of gray hair to prove it.
Yeah, and I was outspoken myself, and apparently being outspoken gets you in trouble. Remember,
exactly.
That's right. What happened to me. I didn't like going with official narratives. And plenty of times in the job, they would say, we need to do, like one of the things they did in Coney Island, and it came from the Brooklyn South Borough, was the minute there was an incident, they want you to flood that area. And like, so if there's a stabbing inside of a building, you have to, they wanted numbers, meaning go get 250s. You have 250s, or something is inside this building. You can't violate people's rights like that. So what did I do? I said, well, that's not going to work. But what about the 4 or 5 block radius, right? So we know that these people hang out and they go. I don't know exactly where they are. I don't know all the movements, but they hang out at. There's a park, not even 2 or 3 blocks away. In this park, late at night, after 9 p.m., you're not supposed to be there. And there were people there. So you're not allowed in the park for many reasons. You make noise. There's people across the street. They can't sleep. There's actual people live there. And, of course, you may encounter one of those people's friends. So that's what I targeted. And that's what I wrote summonses for. And I said, this sounds a lot better than trying to go and violate people's rights in a building. And that came from Brooklyn South wanted this kind of stuff, from Coney Island, and they demanded that they do this kind of stuff. So we've done things. It's just, I don't know. I'm not a catch Daughtry announcing this.
Well, see, a lot of people don't know because they've not been around long enough. But we've seen this movie before, right? Mm-hmm. We still have a pending lawsuit more than 10 years old about the Floyd case. That's the car stops and all the 250. We're still dealing with that. Oh, the taxpayers probably paid about $25 to $30 million right now. And Mylan Dennisstein, who's a lawyer, all right, she used to be the commissioner at the fire department. She's a political operative, but she's a special master. And now she's making over $1 million monitoring the police department. Everybody making money, but it's the same stupid car stops that we've been dealing with. Then we had the clean halls. Remember that one? Yep. And a lot of you guys haven't been around that long because that's the crack era. Clean halls, go in the Bronx and do all these criminal trespass. We're dealing with law, the money from that. That was another big lawsuit. And then the summonses. Oh, forget about it. That was something else. I mean, come on already. These stupid strategies, all they do is cost us money. And then they come up with new strategies that are really the old strategy. Just look at Jessica Tish's programs. They call them new names, but it's just Kelly retreads and Bratton retreads, the same old garbage that's been going all over the place that we're going to wind up in lawsuits again. The racial profile and all the BS. It doesn't yield anything, and they can't do anything about crime. Now, you notice that when the crime goes down, whatever that means, right? Then they take credit for it. Well, man, we made the crime go down. Meanwhile, there's no longitudinal study ever that can show a correlation between police enforcement and reduction in crime. If anything, the weather's a factor. Then you have the community. You have all these other social institutes. So when the crime goes up and the shooting goes up, then all of a sudden you don't hear anything from Tish. I'm going to call her the NYPD savior. I'm not going to say soccer mom. I'm going to say she's the savior, the media darling. All of a sudden she has nothing to say. Eric has nothing to say because they know damn well that you cannot prove scientifically that there's a correlation between police enforcement policies and the suppression of crime.
I also noticed that the car pursuit thing, which was a big John Shell push thing, has led to numerous fatalities. And they have actually egged all these police officers on, the CRT team being the main one. I mean, I don't know how many more videos you have to see of the fatalities of the car chases. So that in itself is going to be a tab left on the city because they're going to be paying for the wrongful deaths and all of that. But that seems to be now the soccer mom came up with that a patrol guy procedure saying basically the same thing we've always known. Don't do a car pursuit. You know, it's got to be certain circumstances, but we still see that to this day. We still have car pursuits going on, and they're still, costing the city millions in litigation because they still do this despite that order that's been there for now. I think it's 10, 20, 30 years that says don't do this, and there's only certain circumstances. Yet, we have an insight. Cass Daughtry did it himself. He went all the way over to George Washington Bridge at one point to stop some. I mean, this is, and it's still going on, folks, with Jessica Tish.
Well, I now have some opinions about that one. Al, I represent a lot of police officers, right? So I'm very favorable. And full disclosure, I have bias towards police officers. I can tell you right now, if people call me up with cases saying the cop did it, the likelihood is I'm going to reject it because I know what it's like to work out in the field. So I understand. But at the same time, today's police officer is a lot different than when I came on. It was a lot different. I mean, the height, I can go into all this stuff. You couldn't be out of shape. You had to meet the height requirements. All these different things. Now, it's a free fall. You couldn't have tattoos all over the place, your neck, your head, your face. All that stuff plays into how policing is handled today. And to me, they're less disciplined than they were when I was on the job. That's the way I see it. I see them on their phones, they're BSing, they're doing TikTok videos and everything else. And to me, they get in accidents and shootings and all these other different kind of confrontation because 9 times out of 10, they have their head in their ass. They're not paying attention to what's going on. I see it all the time. All the time. And these chases and everything else, the cars are not being maintained like they were. When I came on a job, a car would last 2 years, maybe, or 40,000 miles. Now you have cars that 70, 80, 90,000 miles. And believe me, that's a lot of wear and tear on an R&P. Notwithstanding the fact that they use those garbage trucks, stupid Ford Explorers, which not a pursuit vehicles. Years ago, you couldn't even pursue anybody. That wouldn't be considered a pursuit vehicle. Only cars. But now they don't make any full-size cars. Everything they make is small now. So all these factors come into play. So yeah, it's a problem.
I know people in the comments saying TC said I've been saying this for years. It's true. I gotta say there's two shout outs here in the chat. Frankie Paliucci said $9.99 to the podcast. Thanks for that. I'll take that for some espresso later. The system manipulated with that US UGESP. Thanks for that, Frankie. Frankie also, there's a whole story with what's going on with him because he's one of the people embroiled in the that whole drug screening test, which was deemed illegal. I guess you can get into that. And also, our bad $9.99 to the podcast. Also, thank you for that. I will be using that for some espresso also maybe tomorrow. The man is this man is the attorney I'd want in any case I'd have. In my 60 years alive, I've never seen such corruption that has occurred under Adams and his grifters, though Trump has really disappointed. And our bad, I 100% agree with you. It's truly, I don't know what to say. I thought with Trump, we weren't gonna the minute he aligned with Eric Adams, I don't know if people notice it's been downhill. As much good as you think he does, he's got this high negative hanging over his head. Adams being the first thing, and now it's spiraled. The Epstein case, all this stuff, the people he has around him. So I kind of see it as an Eric Adams-like administration right now. It's being run like you have a couple of bright spots, and then there's some really bad people like Bongino and Patel that made a living off of what they kept saying, oh, Epstein, and now, don't talk about this. And Trump turning on his own supporters was crazy. So I don't know what's going on there, but I could tell you, when you're pictured or you're associating with Eric Adams, your integrity and everything around you needs to be questioned immediately.
I have a bone to pick on. I wrote this whole big, long article about how to write an executive order that can do something that can really try to reduce these fatalities in policing, which is, about civil rights and how much counties and the largest police department you can do it as a test to see how they're paying out. Because once you start paying attention to the money, then that's when things get reduced. And the same thing with sexual harassment, etc. The problem is it's not transparent. They'll say, we paid $800 million. You go, to what though? And it's lost in how much in fees and how much the payouts and there needs to be more transparency. So, I mean, I voted for him, and I'll say it openly. I voted for him. I'm a Democrat, but I don't care. I'm a moderate guy. I'm going to vote who makes sense to me, without getting into the politics of the last administration with their auto pen, right? The same thing they're doing in the police department. That's going to come out. And it's interesting it came out in this lawsuit because that is a fact. They were at the midnight hour waiting for Caban to get in, even after 5 o'clock after he technically left. Oh, wait a minute. I wasn't supposed to say that yet. It's going to be in an upcoming lawsuit.
The auto, and there's questions of whether this was going on under Sewell. There's questions whether this was going on under Sewell because I got terminated under Sewell. She also apparently let Kaz Daughtry off for misleading statements, committing perjury. He got 8 promotions off of that. So there's questions about Sewell. I know people love to say, oh, Sewell's the greatest police commissioner. She was there for like 18 months. And by the way, she was seen with the self-admitted criminal mob associate, Jimmy Rodriguez, and up at Consuelo. So before we go and throw parades for this woman, she needs to answer for that. She's been quiet about it.
Remember, she didn't sign off on Kaz Daughtry's set of charges, that second set of charges for the false statements at CCRB. It was actually Pintos that signed off, right? That's one thing. So the question is, why did that happen? And the other thing is, you have to know how Sewell was picked. Remember, she went to high school with certain these people. So if you're going to hear about this in the lawsuit, I don't want to give too much information away, but we know how the connection was and what happened. And no, they didn't listen to her. And the people say, oh, she left because of corruption. Well, she actually says something more pointed than that. And I know about it. And hopefully, and this is a disclosure for the audience, that I represent Sal in his case, hopefully we're going to get Sewell, and then we're going to hopefully get plenty of information about what happened during her tenure and why she really left the police department.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to know about that and how this all went down and why everyone's allowed to hang out with criminals and hanging out at that place in particular, and what the hell was going on over there. Yet and now you've noticed that all the same people are the same ones that basically delivered the tombstone on Eric Adams' political career. It all started under her. They all were going over to this place. They all thought it was, city for sale. And now they're looking around going, what happened here? But you saw it. Take.
Can I address one thing? Because QC Beast was saying that Sewell was handcuffed by the Crumbs crew, which is true. And they're saying if this person was a different mayor, she would have been great. I don't know about that. And I'm going to tell you why. All right. I've been around law to see the changes. First, they used Dr. Lee Brown, he was known as Out-of-Town Brown, right? He was the first black police commissioner after Ben Ward. Well, he was a new guy who came in from Atlanta and Houston. I could talk about those things with the Atlanta child murders without getting into all that. The bottom line is he came here as the first person, as a PhD, as a doctor, etc. And you know what happened? He was an outsider. And the police department, although we expanded the police department, that's been the largest it's ever been, because that was during the crack era and doing it when Eddie Byrne was killed, and they had to burn money and etc. That's when we almost had like 40,000 cops easily. And it didn't quite work so well because he was out-of-town Brown. He didn't understand the culture. It's hard to understand this culture. You have to be able to really grasp this culture, institutional knowledge. Being an outsider is bad. With Howard Safer, he was never a police officer. He's from the federal government and the parole. And then, yeah, he was here, but the bottom line is he never really had a true handle in the police department. And the same thing with Sewell. She ran to the same problem. Actually, I reached out to Sewell, all right, beforehand, because I remember when I did the training class for the Nassau County Guardians, where she got promoted and other people got promoted all the way up to the rank of chief, and I helped them with that class. I remember specifically saying, I'll stop the practice of law. See, this is another little disclosure for the public. I'll stop the practice of law right now. You need someone that's going to cover you. I could be a chief of staff. I bet you they'll never cross you because I understand the culture and I don't play games with people. Didn't happen. She was done. Once she brought in the Nassau people, they have no institutional knowledge. They can tell you anything. And the same thing with Donlin. Oh, he's a federal guy. He's this. Yeah, being a federal had nothing to do with this monster. This monster, you have to really understand it. And culturally, you have to understand it. And the main thing is you got to have respect because a lot of stuff is based on respect. He brought in Tariq Shepard. And as I made a comment about him in a tweet, and I'll say it, I never met him before. And frankly, it's not personal to me. I call him the wolf in sheep's clothing because they put him there specifically to keep on carrying that BS right behind Donlin's back. Donlin didn't know because he has no institutional knowledge. And meanwhile, it did everything under the sun and behind Donlin. So coming as an outsider, that's very hard, very hard. You have to be someone with integrity that comes up and have no problem with lowering the boom on people. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, and also with Tariq Shepard, I also stated finally last night something I've known about for a while, and I was reposting your thing about Tariq Shepard, where Tariq Shepard allegedly has a lawsuit that he's about to file against Eric Adams and the NYPD. I don't know how he could do that when he's involved in not only the Donlin case, he has one right now under Attorney Joe Marone, where if you remember, there was that Officer Tram that shot someone, left him a paraplegic. Yet Tariq Shepard's name is all over that. I don't know how believable, how credible a lawsuit brought by Tariq Shepard, who was clearly shielded and promoted like rocket fuel. I mean, even Donlin mentions how he showed up with 3 stars on his uniform. Nobody promoted him. He just decided to promote himself. So Shepard, Rick Shepard's gonna have a lot. If he brings any kind of case, I don't know. I can't imagine it being even credible. But that's what's being alleged behind the scenes. Listen,
you can bring lawsuits all day long as they don't violate Rule 11 if you're in the federal courts. You could bring a lawsuit. What is he going to sue about? I have no idea. They self-promoted. I guess he was part of the Dream Team. I call him the Nightmare Team. Or he had a seat at the table, the buffet table, the waiter, bring whatever the hell that nonsense they used to say. It sounds ridiculous, like a throwback to the 70s. I mean, It's just ridiculous. Who knows? He wants to sue somebody too. Why not? But I can tell you, when I finally bring forward this case for Epps, it's going to talk about a lot of these things and their little games they play, their little promotions, other thing that the public doesn't know about. And believe me, there's a lot.
Yeah, King Cujo.
So he goes out his little subordinates too.
Yeah, King Cujo says Tariq is trying to say that Donlin shows cognitive issues. I didn't know he promoted himself to department doctor.
Did you see that? I could not believe that, man. He even said something like that. I'm like, this guy's a clown too. Why did you say someone had cognitive issue? It's one of the worst things you could do to someone is call them an EDP and all this other bullshit. And I know cops like to do that, but or say the person's a narcissist. Stop it already. Stop diagnosing people. You wouldn't like it done to you. Don't do it to anybody else, because he had a right to question them. The little bit I know, he had a right to question them because they were a bunch of schemers with their burner phones and everything else. I'm still trying to figure out why haven't the city council requested hearings? When since a law enforcement agency carry burner phones? I mean, what the hell is going on here?
Hey, Eric Adams had 7 phones, and one of them belonged to the police department. And I did file that FOIA request. And next month, I'm supposed to get the answer from City Hall. If they decide not to, I'll have an Article 78, because that phone belongs to you, the taxpayers in New York City. So whatever Eric Adams was using it for, mind you, he has his personal security standing behind him. He could clearly call the police commissioner when he wants. Why he needs an NYPD cell phone when he is a elected public official, I can't even explain that. So I'd like to see what was on that phone.
Right. I agree. And like I said before, and I promise I'm going to do the Article 78 for free. It's for the taxpayers. They deserve it, because transparency is what it is. Government officials are supposed to follow the so-called sunshine law, right? They're supposed to keep government records. You can't block people to call you an asshole. All these things you can't do, because guess what? You're working for the people. This people, starting with Bloomberg, going all the way down, including de Blasio. Now this guy, the worst, man. So there's no transparency. And this is all taxpayer money. That's the thing about it. They're going to golf outings, bringing security details like they're that important. Matter of fact, if people saw Cass Daughtry or Shell or most of these people, they wouldn't even recognize them. Just a bunch of people walking around. This is ridiculous already.
Well, yeah, or have your security go to Fort Lauderdale with you, and that's like the 800-pound elephant. Don't even ask that question, and don't answer it, because Eric came down in Fort Lauderdale and he had NYPD security with him. Who paid for it?
Like this?
Yeah.
What the hell? Who's looking for you? No one's looking for you. Don't care.
Here it is. Here's the clout chasers ball in Fort Lauderdale. Unbelievable that people don't talk about. I still don't know.
Let me go to Los Olos right now and go have a cigar. I don't even smoke, but let me go there and hang out. Can the taxpayers pay me to go there? I could do it.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely right. Oh no, 2112 says absolutely right. You will call civil servants, no more, no less. It is not a private business. You are there to serve the people. You're right. Reed said, since Tariq left, you never heard or saw the current DCPI commissioner. You're right. It's actually.
Whoa. You know why? Well, we know why. Because a DCI person is the name only. They really have a contract that's being paid. That's talking points. And speaking of that, Sal, I don't know if you noticed, but I noticed that these media companies are doing something that's very disingenuous with this administration under the savior, Jessica Sarah Tisch. They're allowing government officials to make anonymous comments or the department says, as opposed to quoting a very specific person, the position of the police department, whatever thing it is, whether it's these probationary police officers I noticed that a lot more going on. And like, are you serious? That is very disingenuous. They should not be allowed anonymous sources. No, they should identify themselves. They're public officials. If they're making a statement on behalf of the agency, they should be identified.
Not only that, it's very important to make. They don't know how to distinguish who is making an official statement from, oh, I'm just I'm clout chasing online, which is Kaz Daughtry does it. I don't know if it's an official statement. That's why they got in trouble to begin with, but of course nothing came out of it, even though they violated the Hatch Act. So this is something.
That's right, the Hatch Act. That's right.
It's been extraordinary how they've done this, and I'm talking about Shell and Daughtry and Shepard. All of these guys are violating these rules, and they don't know if it's their personal opinion because they're in uniform. Is it their personal opinion, or are you speaking on behalf of the police department? I mean, Shell went on Fox Business with Maria Bartiromo, and he basically put down Mom Donnie, but the way he sounds is, are you saying this as John Shell, or are you saying this as the chief of department, John Shell, representing the NYPD? You're there in uniform, so these are things that we didn't see in the past because you would never do that.
No, that's frowned upon. That was frowned upon. You don't make sense. The only time you see people making statements in the public, they're talking about business related to the police department, crimes, things like that. They're not commenting on legislation, the opinions about judges, and this fucking ridiculous. You know, I hate to say that. These people are so unprofessional, it's ridiculous. In my day, you couldn't do that. They only talked about a crime, give updates for the neighborhood. That's it. They weren't allowed to give their opinions or the department's position of whether a law is valid or should be changed. That's so inappropriate. They're supposed to be enforcing the law. That's it.
I want to play this. This is what he said. Let's play this. Play this video. This is what Shell said. We can't hear that. Hold on. I want to, if he could play with the sound. But his comment alone with Mamdani is something you shouldn't be allowed to speak like that in uniform, at least. I worked on the Ray Kelly, who I thought was advising the soccer mom behind the scenes, and also later on Bill Bratton, who has been seen at One Police Plaza numerous times lately. I wonder what that's about. So under these two, it was always a structure, and you never commented on anything other than official business. You know, and here, look, and now we got it back up. Let's play this John Shell guy.
We cannot go backwards. We need someone like the mayor who supports us, funds us, gives us the tools we need to keep this going. We are turning the ship, and we are the safest city in America, and we keep proving it time and time again. But like I just said, there is no going backwards. It's not an option, or we'll lose this city. We can.
Fear-mongering, I hate that shit. He knows goddamn well he shouldn't be doing that. That's fear-mongering.
Fear-mongering in uniform. That's like a double whammy. You got to remember here, Eric. I mean, and for a guy like me, I was terminated under political circle. They tried to make me into some quote-unquote insurrectionist trying to overthrow the government. Yet they never. There was nothing there for this. There's no proof for this. It was just a crazy.
No. You say you got to know. I'm going to correct you on that. It's not no proof of it. They did the investigation, and their investigators admitted that there's no evidence of it. Zero. No planning a crime, no passive committing a crime, and no future crime. So if you can say it like it is, that's what the department determined, yet you still terminate. And now Sewell's going to have to answer for that.
Exactly. But they make it out so that I'm doing what this guy just did or what Kaz Daughtry was doing. That's the whole point. And when they're going to move, and I'm sure they've done it, where they've done this to other people in the department, where they accuse you and charge you of the very thing that they do themselves. And clearly they have. Here is an instance where John Shell, I don't know, we're going to call it electioneering in uniform. I can't believe I'm hearing this. Like I came from that era where literally we were terrified of even speaking on camera.
That's right.
On or off duty, because they would come for your job saying, did you make that statement? Who authorized you to make that statement? I mean, now you got cops on TikTok, on Instagram. I see them with you see their shield out. I mean, it's like this was stuff that you would definitely be either transferred, suspended, modified. You didn't want to deal with that, but yet these guys have allowed it, and no one has a problem with it. It just shows Eric Adams how he runs things. And
it's a free fall. It's just a free fall. They give all these opinions. Like, who cares about your personal opinion? You're there to enforce the law. That's what you're there to do. You're not there to give them opinions. Who cares about your opinion? No one cares. All right. But this is why we have all these problems, though. And what ties to fear mongering, he fund us, we fund us. Yeah, you fund the police department, we spend $1 billion on fucking overtime for the last 2 years. Okay, so what is that getting? What's the taxpayer getting out of that? Not a damn thing.
And it was actually John Shell's own driver, the lieutenant, Brennan, that remember him, he had a ton of overtime. Everybody makes a big deal about Epps, and they completely ignore Brennan, who I don't know what he was doing. He's the driver to John Shell, and he was close to $400,000 himself. But there were other people on that list that made a lot more than Epps, and civilians that made more. But yet that was not even mentioned. The article that originally came out was written in a way, and whoever was the source was written as a way of being a hit piece on her, because they knew she was about to come out with material that was going to bring down the entire police department.
So since you mentioned, I'm going to give another little tidbit of information. They said, oh, she came up with this after they found out about her. Well, there's digital evidence and there's witnesses that can testify that she started making little mini disclosures, or what they call outcries if you ever handle sex crimes, way back when this first happened in 2023. So I gave you another little tidbit of information.
Interesting. That's very interesting. People like to say, oh, there was no. By the way, just so people understand in this, there it is. That's the money that we know about with him. Brennan goes from $260,000 to almost $379,000. Just so people see that disparity. He was just the driver for John Shell. How did that even happen? And by the way, John Shell, he was driving Kaz Daughtry. So I don't know how he was a driver for John Shell. So it's like, I don't understand anything other than it's just a free-for-all, Yeah.
It's a hit piece. It's a hit piece because they know how she can damage them. And believe me, the intention is to damage them.
That's what it was. I mean, Hawk says stealing government funds. That's basically what, but at the discretion of who? The people up top, not one guy, Paul Saraceno. Really, that's laughable.
Remember, people, they don't understand. That 400 list is as good as you sort data. What I try to do is get all the data, and then I can get the raw data and then sort and look at them myself. They haven't given it to me. I think I forgot about it because I've been busy on this stuff, but I haven't forgotten about it. I'm going to mention it in her case, and then I'm going to go file Article 78 to get all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember you did. You did ask for that, and much like everything else Eric Adams does, he's
kicking down the road. Yeah. I just got recently at City Hall kicking something else down the road about the clawbacks. Ain't no damn clawback ever happened in the whole 1645-year history of the police department. I want to find all the clawbacks they did for overtime. Even the controller, I wrote about it before the controller, the last 14 years. The police department has the most overtime out of all the agencies. Has there ever been a clawback? Nope, not that I know. And you're going to find out that the police department, their legal clawback, they were warned not to do that by the pension section. See, I give you a little tidbits information to keep you interested.
Yeah. Nighthawk said, Donnie said the NYPD is running like the mob. I believe it. I saw it and I seen it. I think so too. It's right now. That's one of the allegations. But before I get to that lawsuit, there was two other ones that I wanted to bring up. First, since the last time he came on, the drug screening one, which is something that we put up before. I don't know if you could talk about that and what happened there. You know how they tell you have to do a random dope test, and we found out that all of that was fugazi. So that was the first one I want to bring up. If you could,
okay. So the thing I'm challenging, and it's funny how this happens, because the first thing with the pursuits, I actually wrote about that as an undergrad, how the pursuits can be safer with technology and all that stuff. So I actually did that as an undergrad. This is something else I also did as an undergrad. I said, this hair test is pretty interesting. And I remember they started out in Pinellas County, Florida. They started testing it out. I was reading about it because then I used to be really buff. I used to read all these things for the DOJ. I read a lot of things from the National Institute of Justice. And this hair test, I had an interest in. So there's a company called Psychmedics that supposedly have the gold standard in hair test. I don't know how. They started it off in the 1970s. Now, mind you, the whole concept behind the hair test was forensic, meaning to determine who is forensically, genetically, who the person is, a way to identify people. They then taken it and now applied to, we can tell if person's drug screening for a 90-day window. The problem they don't tell anyone is, first, you have to meet that uniform, that ugly old thing, the federal law that they don't like to follow, called a Uniform Guidelines for Employee Selection Procedures, which means if you give a test to an employee or an applicant, you, the employer, has to prove the test is valid, there's a business necessity, and you consistently check it for disparate impact on race, gender, disability, age, etc. Consistently, you're supposed to do that. Meaning, if there's a random test, you have to check the algorithm. You have to test the method, because does this mathematical tool select more people that are Caucasian as opposed to this version or that person? Because if you're looking at the data of your department, it should be consistent with what your demographics are. They don't test it, never tested it. The test itself, they give this test. Meanwhile, it's never been validated. They self-validate. I love this company. They're the best. So I started doing my research on them. And I found out in 2003, they wrote what they call the 10K. A 10K was filed with the Securities Exchange Commission, which is what investors look if they decide they want to invest in your company. One of the little caveats they put is two things. One thing has never been validated. That's the first thing. The second thing they put, by the way, the second thing, we can't guarantee with our screening process, they wash your hair without a contamination. We can't guarantee exclusion of external contamination, and particularly with persons of color because of the melanin in the hair and the skin. They put that in the disclosure. And the third thing is marijuana. Oh, by the way, marijuana is so complex that you have to have highly sensitive equipment to test for it. That's back in 2003. I have the 10K. Then over time, guess what? Even up to last year, all of a sudden that all disappeared. It's the same test, by the way, has not changed, but that disappeared. I think they're misleading their investors. This is really good. So in 2000, what they did, 14, they switched up. And they put this little small sample study from the Federal Bureau of Investigation about cocaine and metabolites. Oh, we were able to validate this process with the psychomedics test. The problem is not a peer review. It's not longitudinal, doesn't mean anything. It's a small sample study. So what they did is say, we've been validated. Here's the FBI study. BS. Because to this day, no forensic authority, including SAMHSA, SAMSHA, which is the government authority that talks about substance abuse, has ever promulgated a standard related to the hair testing methodology. So in other words, it's never been certified by anybody. So what happened is, when I first looked at this back when I was in an undergrad, that was in now 96. So when I was an undergrad, I wrote about this. All these people had Nevada, the casinos, everyone had it. Then all of a sudden you see now it's down to a trickle. This hair test is barely used now because over time, guess what? All the thing about not being validated has come up, including last year. A bunch of officers were terminated in the Boston Police Department, the city of Boston. They challenged it. It went through appeals. The EEOC went to the First Circuit, which is their appeals court. And guess what they determined? The test in and of itself has a disparate impact on African Americans for a very specific reason, like I said, because of the melanin. They can't guarantee they can wash out external contaminants. They fought it all this time, and then last year, what happened? Settlement. They settled a case for more than $1 million for those 4 officers, the one who fought it. So we're doing that now with the police department here. I'm going to try to do the same thing because since 2005, they've been using that garbage test. Garbage, because that's what it is. They self-certify. I mean, how could we even use something like that? It's ridiculous. And the unions didn't challenge it. They challenged it one time. It went to the Court of Appeals. They didn't challenge it on the theories I'm talking about. So now we're going to try to unravel it to show that this test has been falsely used against all applicants and employees, irrespective of skin color, based on a faulty test.
Frankie Palaiucci, once again, another $9.99 to the podcast. Thank you. I'll go and have espresso later on you. He states breach of contract with the unions, but the unions don't care. And I agree, because in my time, Eric, I know a lot of people that were dole tested. I mean, there's guys, Mike Smith was one. He's part of Finance Unfiltered. He's been dole tested numerous times.
Yep.
For what? Why? What's the cause of this? My friend, I had another friend, my friend Sammy. He's now retired. He was a lieutenant. He was, I think he told me 8 times dole tested. There was sometimes there were almost every other month or so. And they were also saying they caught him running in the street when he was out sick, but he wasn't out sick. So, I mean, you have a problem where they try to target people. This goes back to like the I think the Schoolcraft and Mike Marino incident, Chief Marino at that time, when they were saying everyone was doing steroids, and then they went to that pharmacy, I believe, in Bay Ridge, and that person ended up killing himself. So that's where all this got out of control in this era. The dole test, the steroid thing, and then what supplement you take, what you can't take, and ideally, I don't know how they come up with this. If the test itself, we now know, they even told their board members, I believe Marlon Bethel posted this at this time, that the board members, the actual company that does this test, told their board members, this test can't be certified. It's, taken for consult.
It's in a 10K. But you know what, Sal, since you're talking about that, the other thing is, I wrote all about this hair test. If you go on my website, I wrote about all the policies and what they mean and how they apply. But there's a problem. The randomness is not certified either.
Nope.
So the question is, what's the algorithm and how did they come up with that? So I know a little bit about it from my other cases, but I'm going to really get into it now. What was interesting about this is Andino. He was suspended 30 days. They immediately sent him back for a drug test. You're like, wait a minute. There's only 2 versions in the police department, according to them. For cause, which means you have to have reasonable cause that a person is using drugs, whatever drugs they are, just say it in a general, broad way. Or it's random. When he went down there, he says, why am I here? He was ordered to go there. So that means it wasn't random and it wasn't for cause. They just did it because they can. And this is the bullshit that goes on. And by the way, you can't challenge their test. What's funny about this hair test is it's self-certified. You can go to other laboratories, test negative. Oh, those don't count. Why? It's the same test. Oh, they don't meet our standards. According to what standard? Well, there is no uniform standard. 5 picograms, 10 picograms, whatever. The bottom line is this test says that it's not a positive because your threshold is way too low. And then your test says it's positive because there's no standard. And the thing that's interesting about this so-called hair test, you can't challenge it. And then what's interesting, in Frankie's case in particular, this is very interesting. He got a positive result from the NYPD psych medics. He went to psych medics again as an outside client vendor, and guess what? He got a negative. So now you have psych medics got a negative and positive on the same time frame. Now they'll say, oh, it wasn't the same hair sample. Well, if we believe your 90-day window, theoretically, if he used drugs and tested, unless he's on the 90th day when you tested him, presumably he's still within 90 days when he tests 1 day later or 2 days later. So they, it's no due process. There's no nothing here. And the unions let this shit go forever. Why? Because of the stereotyping. Oh, he probably did it. She probably did it. But yet there are people who test positive. They'll answer for them and say, oh, the MRO, the medical review officer, that's what MRO is. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, that was a false positive. Well, based on what? Because we say so. It's not based on science. So that's what we're litigating now. That's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, and Frankie's actually in the chat. He said it happened to him twice. Patrick Donnie says lots of union backroom deals made at Mateo's. I would bet you if you go there, you'd actually see this. It's probably going on right now at today. But this drug test thing, I can tell you, I know from the way it is, it's done to target people. It's funny that Andino got, called in that he had to go when Martina Monterosso, who was the head of the academy, more than likely her name is hanging around Jimmy Rodriguez at his place with people getting stabbed over there. She has no problem smiling with this criminal. And we already know that what's known to happen around Jimmy Rodriguez. I mean, it's notorious for narcotics and all kinds of stuff. So why isn't she getting tested? What is she doing with that guy?
Exactly, because under the department policy, that would be reasonable suspicion or reasonable cause. And why? Because there's evidence, even coming from this gentleman himself, that he was at least try to get involved with the Lucchese crime family. And one of the made people from he was an informant and everything. He says, "Oh no, he tried to set me up on a $2 million heroin deal, a cocaine deal." So I mean, who's kidding who here? But meanwhile, all administration, the Caban brothers, Madre, all of them used to hang out with them. I bet you not one of them been tested one time.
Nope, I guarantee
you get criminal association because this is what I call the police department rules, is they use them as a sword and a shield whenever they want to use them. If they like you, it's a shield. Oh, well, it's ambiguous, it's broad, it's only a guideline. But then when you have no political power or they don't like you, then all of a sudden it becomes a sword. Oh, you should know. And just like your case, knowingly, you don't know. And I said, okay, what does knowingly mean? I don't know. What constitutes criminal association? I don't know. Okay, so some arbitrary rule that's made up on people's feelings. I got it.
That's basically
they terminate people, disrupt your livelihood, disrupt your finances, cause you financial stress. Why? For BS.
For power.
Allow it to go on too long.
Yeah, for the power. They didn't want power. And that would go into the next thing I want to ask you before Donald's case, and that's the Foster and Headley case, because that one was in the news recently. So we had Detective Foster and Lieutenant, now Sergeant Headley, and I saw Headley. Obviously, I think John McCarry wrote about this, and I don't know if it was in the Post or anything, but I remember. So Headley had filed this lawsuit claiming that Foster messaged her and all kinds of stuff. And I think Headley's part is this: there's other people that she's really looking at besides Foster at that. But Foster then, on the counterclaim that you put up, we came to learn that it wasn't exactly what she was saying. There's a bunch of other stuff that was going on there as well. And I don't know if you get into all of that, because then we came to find out other things, that Headley's got a checkered past, and I guess that wasn't revealed originally.
I could talk about him.
Yeah.
Headley's a very interesting person. Never met her personally, but of course I did my homework. Headley was a female version of Jeffrey B. Madrid. She seemed to believe that the police department was her little playground. So what she did, she took advantage of all, and I'll say it, and I'll say it with confidence too. She took advantage of all these junior officers. She's always getting in relationships. Just like I wrote in the lawsuit, they're all crazy. All the exes are crazy. After you manipulate them, you take advantage of them financially, you emotionally take advantage of them, engage in sexual contact with them that's inappropriate, because you outrank these people 3-4 levels, sometimes 2 levels, and you take advantage of them. So, but then again, what she did is she took advantage of female officers, but then she was also going out with male officers too. So she was equal opportunity, which I don't care what anyone's lifestyle about. I care about how you treat the employees, though. Mm-hmm. This is the problem. So everyone knew who she was. She was a sergeant. She gets promoted to lieutenant. And of course, she's part of, I call her the offshot part of the Crumbs crew, the dream team, because Madre, Caban, they took care of her. They knew her history. They knew she was taking advantage of women, doing things unfair. So when she got wind that she was going to receive charges because women were making complaints about her over the years, she came up with this thing with Foster, because she knows what she did to Foster. She engaged in an inappropriate relationship. I write about it in detail, including a sexual contact in police headquarters, which she either told attorney about, and if she told attorney about it and he didn't talk about it, well, I don't know. That kind of gets into this thing and whether or not you bring in good faith claims. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because if you did that, that tells me that, yeah, you would abuse her. Because there's no such thing as consensual sex at work. All right. And the other females that she knew about, for example, Foster with the money and the bags, etc. And like she said, yeah, I don't have a relationship with you. I have a relationship with your your vagina. Does that sound like somebody that's in a relationship, or does it sound like someone that's a predator and an abuser? Because that's what she is. So she brings a lawsuit, and I say, okay, let me answer this. So she puts a lot of interesting things in there, kind of like the Donnelly lawsuit, a whole bunch of conjecture and BS. I mean, look, I don't like to talk about other attorneys, but I've seen this record before, all right? With one of my other cases with David Terrell, he was sued 100 times, and guess what? All the cases were dismissed against him. And this, unfortunately, happened to be one of the same attorneys, all right? You put a whole bunch of BS in these lawsuits, making up all kind of fantasy nonsense, conjecture, and now I look at it, I say, okay, I'm just going to answer it. And I'm going to put my counterclaims. Put the counterclaims, and of course, we find out that there's a police officer in the 88th precinct that went after, was Lieutenant Headley, and we can talk about how she got demoted, for sexual harassment at a precinct Brooklyn North Christmas party, ironically, 2 days before Epps went forward with her case against Madrid. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
At that party, too. But Headley was there. But she's accused of doing all these different things to her. She received charges and specifications, right? The other thing is, while they did that investigation, Wendy Garcia, who's no friend of, I mean, I'm not know her personally, but I'm not a fan of hers either, because she was part of Hang Out Concentrito's crew too, hanging out with Jim Rodriguez and all the rest of the clowns. But anyway, or I can say in Spanish, one of the good words I know in Spanish, payaso for clown. She makes a determination in a letter that she wrote at 49 saying, oh, we're going to transfer this lieutenant to the 5-2 because we have evidence of a substantiated complaint, which she didn't say where it was, but it's a cop in the 88, and I know the name, but I'm not going to say the name. A substantiated complaint, sexual harassment, and there may be other complainants. It's not maybe, they knew it already because there were other women complaining. When Headley went to the 5-2, guess what she did? Sexually harassing the cops over there. What she was doing was looking in the female locker and keeping the door open between the lieutenant locker and the other female locker and looking at them getting dressed. How do I know? Because I already spoke to cops in the 5-2. So you're going to probably see some cases from the 5-2 with sexual harassment. This is for the attorney that don't know much about his client. All right. There's going to be cases from there. And there's also people that were in the Manhattan Court section too. There's another little disclosure for you where she was last this time. Before they finally put her ass out in the pound where she can't be near any female officers. And I've been around a long time. I've never seen a female officer assigned to the pound. And the reason why, because there's a safety factor, right? If it's a day tour, yeah, it's okay. But once you start getting the nights and 4 to 12s, if they still even keep them open 24 hours, you have to worry about they're isolated in these usually desolate areas. So you tend not to want to have the female officers out there by themselves, right? And especially they have no firearm either. So that's where she is now. They shipped their ass out to a pound. But it's interesting because when I brought these counterclaims and I made it public because the news didn't want to write about it, that's fine, put it up on my website. Not even a half hour later, phone call, 375 Pearl Street. And anyone knows what 375 Pearl Street is, that's where risk management and formal employee relations is. Guess what? You have to come down here forthwith, Lieutenant Headley. And when you get that call, if anybody don't know what that means, you know what that means? Demotion time. Within an hour, she was demoted from lieutenant back down to sergeant, where she should have been demoted in the first place when they first established that case against her. So she really only made this case against Foster because she knows she abused her. And she figured, oh, I'm going to show all these text messages back and forth. But if you know anything about trauma-related victims, they do a lot of things to keep themselves alive. That doesn't make sense to us, but it makes perfect sense to them. They say things to keep themselves safe. I love you. I can't wait to hang out with you. They say a whole lot of stuff. You go, oh my God, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? All you have to do is know a little bit about victimology. And you know what you know about? Trauma-related people, survivors, going to do things to survive. Just like Patty Hearst, when she went out and committed bank robberies in the 70s and all. This is what you see. It doesn't mean that they're going along with it because they agree. They're going along with it to survive. And the problem is there's value judgments made. So we're ready to litigate Forster fully.
Yeah, I definitely wanted a full take on that because I covered it for a little bit, but I'll now I wanted people to hear what's really going on behind the scenes. Is obviously with things that are not being said that need to be said about that, and also the department took action, actually demoting someone, which is there's very rare unless you commit a crime while you're in a probationary stage of rank, you never see a demotion. Here, they called her in because all these things are piling up, and I would believe it's because of the charges and specifications she's getting, and also other complaints that are incoming.
Well, I can tell you from the inside, they said they didn't know about that Forster issue, but they did know. They knew, and I'm going to tell you what. I specifically did not sue certain high-level officials only because I was asked not to do that. But I may revisit it, and then there'll be more cases against, the people, the Savior, Kinsella, Benoit. There's a few people who knew about this stuff. It's just I didn't do it because I kind of followed something that the client wanted me to do, and I really normally wouldn't do that. And you see the same thing with Epps. You see the same thing with all the trauma victims. They do the same thing. They go, yeah, but she sent 10,000 text messages. So what? It's trauma responses. Who cares?
Yeah.
But she didn't tell you about that locker, did she? She misled you. But you were too busy because you're trained to do what? No, not you're trained. So many people engage in circular reasoning, and they pick out facts that support their proposition of bias. See, if I did it, they go through their lens as opposed to looking at the lens of the person that received the trauma. Bad practice.
That's kind of what Eric Adams does in a nutshell, his administration. It's unfathomable how many sexual harassment / assault lawsuits have been levied against his administration and his New York City Police Department. Heck, I think there's some in the fire department. I mean, it's everywhere you look underneath him, there's some kind of perversion going on. And you got to say to yourselves, there has to be a problem here. I mean, we had Timmy Pearson running around, and that guy shouldn't be left alone with any female, let alone the guy shouldn't be in charge of anything. But he is in so many lawsuits that just him alone. And it's the same thing. And it's everywhere you look, they do the same thing. And they traumatize people, they smear people, they browbeat people, and they just like bullies and think they can get away with it. Because in the end, no one's ever held accountable. Just the city.
Just a little side, because I saw someone just put up a thing about Eric Adams. No, I don't know whether he said it or not. Where he says, where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's all smoke and mirrors. But it's funny. It just reminded me kind of that Lorna case that I forgot Lorna's last name, but the case where yeah, right. She's accused of he assaulted me or forced her to perform oral sex or whatever. And I remember when it first came out, and he says, "Well, I don't know her," and I said, "That's fascinating." Because I remember when I was the first vice president of Guardian, I met her, and I know exactly who this person is. She was in the transit. I knew exactly who she was. And that's just a little side. Like I told you, there's a long history of stuff here. So, I have a lot of institutional knowledge, let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's crazy. So now I figured I get into the main event of today. And the main event was Tom Donlan's RICO complaint, the civil RICO complaint filed yesterday, which has a ton of things that we could actually cross-reference with Epps' own thing. But just before I start, I wanted to see here. This is from my friend Eli Evans wrote this. According to pages 161 to 165 of Tom Donlan's federal RICO complaint, then Chief Jeffrey Madry engaged in a covert and unauthorized intrusion into Donlan's NYPD computer systems. I wonder where I've heard this before. Donlan alleges that Madry maintained back-end access to his internal email accounts scheduling systems, and calendar, privileges that were not only unauthorized but actively abused. At one point, a scheduled one-star chief meeting was removed from Donlan's calendar without his knowledge or consent, a clear act of interference in operational duties. And there's more to this. The complaint goes on to identify Sergeant Special Assignment Danielle A. Venus as an embedded mole operating within Donlan's chain of command. Venus allegedly acting under the direction of both Jeffrey Madry and Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters Michael Gerber, served as their in-house spy, funneling Donlan's private communications and files directly to the individuals targeting him. Not only was Madry unlawfully posing as the chief of the department, but as Donlan notes, Madry was effectively masquerading as his personal IT gatekeeper, weaponizing internal systems to monitor, undermine, and manipulate Donlan's professional standing. That's unbelievable. Where have we heard that before?
Okay. All right. So when you make allegations like that, you better have some information to back it up. All right. Allegations, lawsuits are what they are, right? You can make allegations under Rule 12. In this case, since it's a RICO case, you not only got to meet Rule 12, which is going to be some plausible offense, but under Rule 9, if you're talking about civil RICO, just like criminal RICO, is very specific. You have to give very specific allegations. It's a heightened plea requirement. Although theoretically they say it's not, but it is. Whenever you say fraud and things like that, it's a much heightened requirement. If you look under federal rules of Section 9B, that deals with all the RICO and what you have to put specificity. Now, if you're going to say someone has a back channel to your computer, you better have some evidence from the management information system, or whatever they call it. It's not MISD anymore, or whatever they call it now. But your IT people, you better have some evidence to support that. Other than that, they're just baseless allegations. And then a rule called you can have a case dismissed. Because making allegations, you have to have very specific things. Like, for example, this is where I take issue with it. Because Donlan, the things that I've seen in there is 261 pages. That doesn't mean a court won't look at it and go, yeah, this is a whole bunch of conjecture. And what leads me to some suspicion of it is he was there a short time. So I don't see how he would know all these very specific things because he had no institutional knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. But there's one thing that I found disturbing, right? That there was some conjecture that's related to my client, Patricia Epps, and very specifically discussing whether or not the FBI executed a warrant against her. And that is patently false. There was never the FBI at her home. There's no execution, anything. And it's just disingenuous. And to suggest that she did not work is also disingenuous because there's going to be a lot of evidence to show that she even worked on vacation. So, you know, I know he wants to try to make this look like a civil RICO case. They're very difficult to make, by the way. And where do we see that? We saw that recently with the P. Diddy case, right? Mm-hmm. Civil RICO. How much did the government spend on that case? Probably about $20 million. I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing the amount of resource they put in had to be at least $15, $20 million. And the jury rejected it in 2 seconds. It might have gotten past the court to pass the summary judgment and the motion stages, but the jury rejected it. Civil RICO cases are very difficult to make. Now, you know, who could talk about connections between the parties, who did the rubber stamping, who did it, and Tariq Shepard. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. One of the people, Patricia Epps. So I don't understand the tactic because the better move would have been to talk about there was abuse going on in the office, but stay away from the overtime thing because Donnelly wasn't even there long enough to know what the hell was going on. He really doesn't. And to suggest how there was some kind of overtime abuse and you don't mention quid pro quo, she mentions, says, oh, yeah, he says it later on, but then you make it, you're disingenuous because there's no evidence that the FBI raided her house. There is none because it didn't happen. It's false. Where are you getting that from? Why would you put that in a lawsuit unless you have a good faith basis to say that? As an attorney, you have an obligation under Rule 11, and this is where I took issue with this particular lawyer before, with the David Terrell cases. He was the monster cop. He did all this stuff to Pedro Hernandez. He did this. He shook people down. Sharik Gray. I can go on and on with these cases. 22 cases dismissed.
I do remember that.
If you're going to bring something against someone, you're supposed to vet it as best you can as an attorney. And that's something that was known because I talked about it when people asked me, was a house raided? I said that way back in 2000 or whenever it did, I think in January or something. No, her house wasn't raided for what? What did she do? She's a victim? I know everyone wants to have this narrative. Oh, she made all this money. I think the people more upset that the money she made as opposed to talking about the abuse.
Yeah.
At what cost?
They've been that's like one of the number one things with her is they always $400,000 and they ignore the claims, right? It's like constant drumbeat.
Because they want to make value judgments, and then people say outlandish and disheartening and mean-spirited things like, "Oh, and you were working it," and this. Oh, what kind of bullshit is that? Well, what about my client Maria Mendez, who I have an active case against, that also includes Tariq Shepard. This is why I even mentioned it, because she reminded me of it today. Tariq Shepard was also a connection to this guy, Michael Gans, and one of the people that she accused of sodomizing her, rape 103-2 precinct. And now we admitted now we have through the deposition, now we know there was contact on duty and everything else. So her claims of bullshit too. There's no such thing as consensual sex at work. So I think it could have been a better strategy, which makes me question the complaint, because Epps can talk about a whole lot of stuff that happened to Donlin. She was there in the front seat.
Who was only there and actually mentions in the lawsuit police commissioner name only, which is a name that me and the guys in the Finest Unfiltered said.
Of course, because Madre and Kaz, they ran the police department. Kaz is the errand boy for Madre. If you don't know, he's his errand boy and the keeper of his secrets. He's the one driving him to all the subordinates' house, having sex with them when he's on duty. Yeah, I said it. So what? Because the truth.
Right here, Special Higgins said Donlin wouldn't have firsthand knowledge of most of the stuff alleged on the first 92 pages of the lawsuit. It's mostly based on the news, or kind of based on what we've been saying. Me and John and Eric and Marlon been saying this forever. It's it kind of reads that way almost, like, and maybe he does watch the shows, or I don't know if he knows what happened prior to him, but clearly. This has been what's being said there, especially in the first 90 pages, is a lot of what was said here and all the things that we were detailing. And people said, oh, you guys are crazy. Oh, the Joe Cops of the world will say, don't worry about it, kid. That's how the job is. That's how the Joe Cops speak. And, I'm gonna try.
But Sal, he didn't even know about the vehicles being disabled from the IVDs, right? For the vehicle locators, he didn't know about that either. I'm surprised that's not in the lawsuit, because if you know anything about the vehicles that are being taken all over the place, hey, you can go commit your crimes then, right? Because there's no way to track them. And it wasn't. I didn't read the whole lawsuit, but I'm pretty positive that wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, this one here, this is I think one of the best claims of it, and it's again, Eli Evans wrote this out. Pages 184 to 186 of this lawsuit. He details the Tariq Shepard incident, November 3rd, the New York City Marathon. So according to Donlin, Shepard became belligerent and physically aggressive following a routine photo op, accusing Donlin of touching his arm. The encounter escalated dramatically when Shepard allegedly threatened, "I will effing kill you," in a public setting in front of Donlin's young daughter, who became visibly, emotionally, and distressed. The complaint further alleges that Chief Jeffrey Madry was forced to physically restrain Shepard to prevent him from attacking Donlin. Despite this overt act of criminal aggression and insubordination, Donlin reports that Madry refused to obey a direct order to report Shepard's conduct to the Internal Affairs Bureau, effectively shielding Shepard from accountability. What followed was even more troubling. Donlin claims that the next day, Mayor Eric Adams circulated a department-wide email to all NYPD members and the media, allegedly mischaracterizing the incident in an attempt to control the narrative and bury Shepard's misconduct. This is...
Wait a minute. You see this? I'm talking about he has no institutional knowledge, right? He's talking about reports internal affairs. The fuck are you reporting internal affairs for? You in charge of the goddamn police department, right? He should have been suspended right on the spot.
That's what we all said. In fact, I believe it was either myself or John McCarry that actually pointed this out when it happened. People said we were lying about it, but we were the first to report on the incident because it's the same weekend, I believe, that the police academy was defaced out in College Point.
Yes.
I posted the pictures and they said, "Oh, you're a liar." And then they looked at it and go, "No, it actually happened." We still don't know who those vagrants are, by the way. But this incident happened, and then we got accosted only to be, "Oh, well, they were right. It did happen." So this incident, though, proves that I think Donlin, who doesn't know the culture, should have suspended Shepard. Should have suspended.
Right there on the spot.
And I think that was the strongest claim that he had, because that was a direct thing that happened in front of. There was numerous witnesses there.
Exactly.
I mean, Special Hagen again. She had. I just saw what she said there. The finest covered most of the first 92 pages before anyone else. I believe Special Hagen actually read the whole lawsuit, by the way. So that's why she's saying that it's 90 pages in the beginning is basically this show and this network for months and years that we were talking about. Marlon Bethel states, sounds like he didn't even understand the policy. I don't think he did. I think we've said this over and over again that this guy was there like for a short time. I don't think he knew anything about the NYPD culture. So coming in, it's like a setup. And in reality, what we've been telling you was the story all along. Badgery and Kaz Dawdry ran the police department. On the side, I understand it was Banks and Pearson, who Tim Pearson ran around and actually he did promotions. He was doing internal affairs. I mean, he was doing discipline for not only the police department, but we also learned through Serena Townsend and others that it was corrections, because then there's the correction people making lawsuits. Yeah, corrections now endorsing Eric Adams, if that makes any sense. And of course, Eric, who, as we like to say, a frustrated wannabe police commissioner, is the mayor. So that is what's really, really going on with all of this, with this stuff with Donlin. I'm definitely going to try to have a scholar on just to detail everything here, and because there's so many things I can't go over. It's like I got 260 pages. It is a bombshell, but to me, it shows one thing: with the 4 other chiefs plus Donlin, 5 executives essentially back up what we on this network and on this show have been telling the public. And at first, we were deemed crazy. We were deemed, there were so many words, rats. John McCarry, who was threatened by none other than the mob associate, self-admitted criminal Jimmy Rodriguez, over him complaining to IAB about threats from a cop and other people in this circle that came after the podcast itself. And all of that now is being validated. I don't know if it's too little, too late, because now it's the end of the Eric Adams administration, but we told you so.
Yeah, because, like I said, this is actually, these are good for a main purpose, because it's going to support a little bit what Ep said, a little bit in the public. Remember, she hasn't detailed everything yet. She's in other places, but not in the public. But this is going to go to support what she's talking about, which was there was widespread corruption at the upper echelon of the police department. The difference is she'll be able to talk about very specific circumstances. This lawsuit, the little I read, is written in broad ways. She could talk about very specific circumstances, including some of these lawsuits that are in the paper. Gabby Walls, Dana Raceland, the retaliation, the Stevensons of the world, all these other people have done all this stuff. She can talk about a whole lot of that because she watched it go down right in front of her. I call them the crew. They sat there and come up with the concocting their bullshit, including the unethical lawyer. And yeah, I'm going to say he's unethical because you would never get me to do that job like Michael Gerber. Come up with, let's see what we're going to come up with to attack the bullshit. Nah. So unethical, but yet he's still there.
And that's the point. Jessica Tisch who's the police commissioner, has let corruption flourish underneath her because she's a soccer mom on the job. She does not understand the culture. I know she made cell phones for the police department, which, by the way, had to be they had to redo.
Wait. You mean the Nokia phones that was, what was that, $10-15 million wasted contracts that the phones couldn't be used? Nokia, they're not even really in business anymore. But yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and also the continued puff pieces on her behalf that she's some kind of super. Like I've never seen anything like it. Between her and Eric Adams, you'd think the New York Post works for both of them, and it's ridiculous because you're not getting any unfair and unbiased thing. And listen, people love to say, "Oh, you guys have an axe to grind," right? That's the big one with me. Oh, you have an axe to grind. But can you debunk anything I've said? No. People have tried. And they're like, well, you know, he does make a point there. I was even correct on the whole email Bove and the Trump. And now Trump is actually dropping his approval ratings. I told you the Eric Adams thing is going to boomerang. It's a boomerang and it will not stop. It's not going to end. It doesn't matter what he passes. He can't get past certain levels of things that he's done. The association with Eric Adams, now he's degrading his own base with the whole Epstein thing. Everything correlates because it's the same people in the same circle. The Epstein thing was actually handled by the Southern District of New York, who also handled Eric Adams' case. It all connects, folks. That's what I've been trying to tell you. You just want to, people want to see what they want to see. It's like as low information as you can get.
But you know what's sad about it? And like I said, again, this is why I do it, other than go to these other places and have even long conversation with them, because they like to sell people what you call in the legal business. You learn this one in law school called red herrings. Really, there's no such thing as a red herring. It's just made up nonsense, right? So we like red herrings. And then when people try to resist, because it's your First Amendment right to resist, right? You're not committing any crimes. You give them your opinion about things that you want to see change in society, which is perfectly what the First Amendment is designed to do. But when you challenge the system, even if you're correct, people have a tendency to engage in ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem, personal attacks. That's all they are. It's not based on anything. Just he's axe to grind. He's this, he's that, he's this. It's okay. This is why I like to put up things. And one of the things that we talked about when you decided to do this podcast, what did I talk about? Have evidence, have document. See, because it's very difficult to rebut that. This is based on this document. See, it says it right here. Oh, well, you create these documents, you make them up. This court case right here says you can do that. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's the problem. A lot of people are misinformed, just as Donald was in his lawsuit. Oh, well, this, that, and the other. If you're going to be a manager at the level of the police commission, at least have like a little rudimentary understanding of what the labor law is before you say or suggest that an employee did something improper. I mean, can you like read the labor law? See, everybody wants to have these jobs. It's like in your case, we had what's the name? Ernest Hart. Ernest Hart. He was a judge. He was this, a highfalutin. He went to Villanova Law School. I have nothing against him personally, but when I asked him a question about the legal bureau, he couldn't tell me anything.
That's true.
Can't tell me squat. Is this administrative subpoena good? Is it bad? Is it being used for criminal? Is it legal? Is it this, that? I don't know. I mean, but everybody wants a pinky ring. They want to be the boss. They want to be the commissioner. They want to be the chief. They want to be this. They want to be that. So they can order people all over the place like Cat Daughtry. Probably the one thing I do agree with him, he wrote in a lawsuit about how Cat Daughtry is unprofessional. He didn't belong there. He's a clown. He should never been promoted anything. I wouldn't put him in charge of a dog catching. He should have been fired when he was a rookie with his gun collar that he lied about in 2008 in the Eastern District, New York. He should have been fired as a rookie. But yet he rose through the ranks. Why? Because he was the errand boy driving Madry to go support all the people. That's the problem. The main thing is, but if you're going to be an executive, if you're going to accuse or make someone to draw inference that an employee did something wrong, at least have a rudimentary understanding of the law if you're going to do it. It's embarrassing if you don't.
Yeah,
you're criminalizing things that are, at best, a civil dispute between parties, between an employee and an employer. What worked and who worked and was it authorized or not? Because abusing your employees is not contemplated in the law. because it's a misdemeanor in New York to abuse your employee and not to pay them. So if you're going to talk about this stuff, at least have a rudimentary understanding of it before you make a comment.
I this lawsuit, there's a lot in there I like, but again, I think just like you, I would like to see some kind of documents or like evidence of things. I clearly was a police commissioner, but he also doesn't understand the culture. That's a whole nother point. And last week when I had Serena on to discuss the 4 chiefs, again, you were talking about personal ad hominem attacks, and a lot of people were attacking those 4 chiefs because they were saying,
well, they did it to the lawyer. I mean, Eric did it to the lawyer. I never seen anything like that before. You attack the lawyer. Listen, the lawyers represent a legal position, right? Like, I mean, I said something about school. I don't have anything against it personally. My point is that I represent a position. So when I see a certain thing, I have to be an advocate on behalf of my client. You know, sure. Point out certain things that's going to protect the client. So yeah, ad hominem attacks tells you the person has a weak position. Where Eric did is attack Serena, and I call him Eric because I know him personally. So that's Mayor Adams, all right? He attacked her personally. She's this, she's that. And with Donlin, he's a lightweight, he's this, he's a poor employee. Well, you're the one that appointed him. What the hell are you talking about? No, you don't do ad hominem attacks. Stick to the facts and the issue.
Oh, hold on. I think he was either asked a question about this. So let me see this. This is Eric Adams. This is today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate all of you.
Mayor Adams, yesterday the interim police commissioner you appointed said the NYPD under your administration is a criminal enterprise. Do you want to comment?
And whatever you do, keep Katie safe.
Do you want to answer the question? The lawsuit alleges you had a criminal enterprise in the NYPD.
A frivolous, disgruntled employee.
You appointed him. What went wrong then if he was so disgruntled?
Why did you appoint him in the first place?
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Good.
You know what's funny? The last time I'm going to tell you what happened. See, this is what happened. You don't know history. 2 mayors commented on lawsuits, and they wind up being deposed. I'm going to tell you what the case is. Fire Department versus City of New York. That was the whole big thing about the racial discrimination and hiring practices. Bloomberg got dragged into that case because he made comments about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you also have Giuliani. I don't know if you guys remember. This is probably if you came on a job. They had the floats issue out in the 100 in Howard Beach, in Broad Channel, and guys were riding the floats, and they had like gold chains on and bags. I mean, like they have 40s and doing all the stereotyping. Giuliani made comments about that, about the disciplinary, and guess what? He got dragged into that case. What Eric's doing is making that comment. He's going to want to get dragged into that case because he's becoming emotional.
Yeah,
if he thought it didn't have merit, he wouldn't have commented on it.
He's definitely going to end up. He's the top person as a defendant, but he's commented on that. He took a personal swipe at Serena last week when she was on this very show at the exact time she was on this show talking about it, and then his little minions were in the chat saying exactly what the parroted points of him and what his communications director said. He also there's other lawsuits that he's also involved in the Luigi Mangione case. I mean, my God, this guy can't. I mean, he's a frustrated police commissioner. He was never a cop. I mean, the guy was never on the street.
Well, you already see what happened with the Mangione case. There's a good chance that damn case is going to get dismissed because the cops blew that case, not even just here, in other places too. They didn't give him Miranda. They asked him all these questions. That case is in jeopardy.
And he did a perp walk with 30 people behind him. Here it is. I still want to know what this cost the New York City taxpayer. Look how many people were there. And this is the first and only perp walk I know Eric Adams has ever conducted. And it came as a mayor in his 60s when he was a cop for 22 years, allegedly. So that right there, you are tainted. You tainted the entire jury pool. You're making this guy out to be like a guy that was wanted on a FBI list or something. Meanwhile, he was hiding out in Pennsylvania, and those cops did all the job because Kaz Daughtry was too busy, once again, promoting himself while he went over there and met up with these officers in Pennsylvania. It's really unbelievable.
You got to add the important part, without authorization too, by the way.
Correct. He didn't have authorization to go. I mean, the whole case is tainted from beginning to end, and they can't stand. They hate. I mean, he he should just be quiet and worry about, he's going to have to answer for a lot of things. But that was really like unbelievable what happened. Yeah, Tom Troy said the only thing you ever needed was 2 detectives and a rental auto from Narco for the extradition. That's true. Rob Lukash, that was a parade, not a perp walk. It really is.
I know. It's ridiculous. And you know who's commenting like that the most? People have been around. We've seen all this stuff before. You're like, what the hell is going on here? This is like it's like the Keystone Cops. It's actually pretty sad, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, but I tell you, Tom Joyce was a lieutenant. He was highly decorated in his unit, handled all this stuff with detectives. He would have never allowed something like that. And Rob Lukash, who's the actual chief, he was a chief in SOD, who would have been involved in that, would have absolutely said, what are you doing? What are we doing? It's crazy to have all these people there.
Just send a helicopter down there. It costs about $3,000 or $4,000 an hour in jet fuel to fly that thing all over the damn place. I mean, come on already. It's fucking ridiculous.
That's one of many sweeping issues with Mr. Eric Adams. I think the last thing you should go out on is, I guess, my very own case that we mentioned. So you mentioned Sewell. We mentioned some of the testimony. These guys don't know anything about criminal association. So why don't you give everyone an update? Because I don't really do it, but since you're here, you might as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because one of the first cases I tried as a lawyer in the trial room was a criminal association case. And ironically, it's a guy who was a rookie in the 113 right after I left the 113. And there's a criminal association case. And basically, he was found not guilty. And the commissioner used a bunch of facts and say, yeah, just because you know people and all the rest of this stuff, that doesn't mean anything. That was basically in a nutshell. And he talked about this test. The police department has since gone away from that. But something interesting, so I don't forget. Since Sal brought this case, we brought it. Guess what? Now the police department have all these 10-point tests that change the policy a couple of times about what really association means, but it's still not defined, by the way. Mm-hmm. So in this case, they terminated Sal Greco because he was associating with Roger Stone and Christian Davis. So what does that mean? Even if you look at his decision for the termination, the only thing they have him is a picture next to a guy. That's it. There's no evidence that the guy in the picture, Roger Stone, was committing any crime. There's no evidence that Christian Davis was committing a crime, or neither one of those parties were planning a crime. They were in the commission of a crime. None of that stuff. And I said, okay, so we bring this case. And I said, okay, so what does criminal association mean? It's not defined anywhere in department policy, even to this day. And what does knowingly mean? That's not defined either. I mean, at least the penal law, knowingly is defined. If you look at a criminal procedure law, it'll tell you knowingly means this, intentionally means this. That's the mens rea, they call it in criminal cases, right? The mind of what's in the mind. So what's knowingly? Meanwhile, probably about a third of the United States have criminal records. So there's a good chance that people around you have some sort of criminal record. So is it fair to enforce some criminal association rule based upon an association that you may or may not even know the person has a criminal record? Because how's the police officer supposed to know? They can't run into the law enforcement database because it has to be for department necessity. Is that how police officers are supposed to live? Let me run this person's name if I know them. Because otherwise, I don't want to be associated with a criminal. So that's what the way they interpret the rule. That's what it really means. So they fired him and they said, oh, he brought shame upon the department, all this other mumbo jumbo, right? The other thing they accused Sal of doing is he was working as a armed security. What do they base that on? A picture. No records, no business records, no conversation with anyone. And the few people they did interview, they established that there's no records saying that he was security. The other thing that was interesting is how they use these subpoenas, man. They were doing a criminal case, and I like what they said about the C cases. Now, I've been doing this a long time now, and I already know C case stands for criminal. You have C, 1, 2, and 3. 3 being the most severe. Or is it 1 to severe? I always get them backwards because I haven't looked at them in a while. But the most severe means that if you get a C case, that means you're likely to the case of the result in arrest. And I'm still trying to figure out to this day, what the hell was he doing that was anything related to an arrest? Nothing. Zero. The first allegation was, oh, he was going to overthrow the government and have this civil war. And that's fascinating. But doing what? They did all the investigation. They found out that's not true. Did he compromise police law enforcement databases? He didn't do that. Nothing. So other than having him in a picture, that's his offense. So now here comes the matrix. The disciplinary matrix talks about the so-called proposed disciplinary action. This is supposed to make the system fair for everyone. So if you look at it, it says even if he gets convicted, it's 30 days. So then someone explained to me why he was terminated. Because there's nothing in the rules that say you do that. Then if you look at Sewell's decision, she terminates. That's it. You said based on what though? What's the enhancer? And this is what the panel discussion talked about, how they come up with these arbitrary decisions. So we're at an interesting point now. We have Orenstein, who was one of the investigators. If you don't know about him, he was in that Paz case. You remember that phony case they brought against all these police officers saying, oh, they were trafficking prostitutes and all this business. They were throwing a damn bachelor party like everybody does. Who fucking cared? They threw a goddamn bachelor party. Anyway, they found out in that case, Orenstein, Jeremy Orenstein, make sure we get his name right. In that case, they found out that he lied about the wiretaps because they wiretapped him and everything. He's minimized the wiretaps and basically says, well, you know, these guys were engaging in all this. When he got confronted in court, guess what he had to admit? It's not quite true. So he lied on those two guys. They wind up getting acquitted by the judge immediately, and they wind up getting promoted to sergeant and lieutenant. Those are the Nieves brothers, right?
Yep.
At the same time, this was going on with Sal's case. And yet he's in this case, so we're still looking to depose him, to confront him about that and what he meant by this criminal association. And Sewell also, we're trying to get the court to agree that there should be a Monell claim here because this subpoena business, they were using for criminal cases, even though the court told them not to do that for civil matters, that was done in this case. So that's where we're at now. So I got to write a letter to convince the court to not only let me depose them, but at some point bring a Monell claim. And I'm going to use Donald's lawsuits and these 4 other supervisors to say, this is what goes on. This is corruption. It's a pattern and practice. Let the Monell claim go through.
Exactly.
Because they will not be able to answer why they terminated Sal other than personal opinions. They're never going to admit it. But what's the other reason? Because all they have is a picture. He didn't commit any offense other than stand next to someone. Just like they're doing. And I got plenty of examples now. Jimmy Rodriguez, Caban's brother, who's a criminal, got terminated, and all these other people that hang around, and the nasty boys. I'm going to call the name of the group though. The Nasty Boys, and Ja Rule, Cardi B, everybody. So who's kidding who is? It's all BS. And they weaponize the rules against people. They didn't like Sal. They didn't like what he stand for. They didn't like Roger Stone. They don't even know these people personally. And then they made a decision to terminate.
They didn't like Trump at that time, but now they're actually hanging out with him. So if I see one of these people keep referencing me, first of all, I'm going to state this. I was never security for Roger Stone. No. So, and I didn't feed Roger Stone any info. There's a low information guy in here, but this guy never wants to answer the question. Was he with Jimmy Rodriguez and hanging out at Con Sofrito himself? Because see, at the heart of this is they were claiming things that I clearly never did, and they said it, but they went through it anyway. But they have all their people, which are being named in all these lawsuits, hanging out with this mob associate, self-admitted criminal. His place never gets shut down. It stays open. There's human trafficking that we learned through here that there was reported there that they did nothing about. So they're actually engaging.
Yeah. See, they never thought we'd get that. All right. So yeah, I'm going to mention that since you talk about human trafficking. So in this case, I got a subpoena. The first time I tried to get documents from the police department, dead end. Went to the state liquor authority, sort of a dead end, right? We found out about how the transfer happened from a Creek Cafe to now this 1315 restaurant group, which was doing business with Con Sofritos. Then I did another service. I went back up to Albany again. This time I hit the pay dirt. There was something in there that wasn't in the last disclosure. There was some emails. There's a cop who wrote a violation for a Cree at the end when they was transitioning to 1315 restaurant, also known as Con Sofritos. There was some kind of assault. There was a gun involved, right? Remember this, Sal? There was a gun involved, assault. The cop wrote a violation, but he did something more important. He made an allegation that there was some kind of nefarious activity going on. And it went from the 4-5 precinct, which covers that area, to the then old OCCB, which was old Public Morals, but now it's all the Detective Bureau. And in particular, who answered? A sergeant from the human trafficking part. And you can see there's emails going back and forth that they open a case, but then it hits a dead end. And we don't know what happened. Now, it's funny because when I asked for disclosures from the police department, they didn't give me that. So I only knew about it from the State Liquor Authority disclosure. And then, of course, that's how I got it. And that's how Sal knows about it, because it's obviously it was part of his case. So now he can talk about it. It's a public document, really. So this is what's going on here. And we probably won't be able to get to the bottom of it because the judge won't let us go that far. But somewhere along the line, there was some kind of allegation related to human trafficking, meaning prostitution and drug activity was going on at Casa Frito, consistent with the other places. And yet no one's been suspended, no one's been terminated. And this goes on from the upper management to union officials and everyone. Literally had to be hundreds of people who went through that place. And notwithstanding the fact they had their own little happy land, thank God it didn't happen, with their shed that was unauthorized to be used, with building out some kind of shed in the parking lot, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, the whole thing sounds ridiculous. Anybody who says anything otherwise is just clearly, you're just a hater, and you're clearly low information. And those who stick up for Jimmy or the Casa Frito thing, you're part of it. You're part of the problem. You are probably one of these guys that hung around there and did whatever you see no problem with. I see a problem when if a cop or an executive, more importantly, executive, meaning police commissioner, hanging out with this mob associate and is a criminal. He's a criminal. You watch Jimmy on his own he goes on these podcasts. He glorifies all his criminal acts that he's done, and he boasts about his relationship with former and current police officers or executives. How this is not, I mean, there should be a wall at one police plaza in every precinct. Who you don't associate with, Jimmy's the top guy. He'd be one of the top guys that have. I think Fat Joe would be another one. And if this person that keeps saying this stuff, your boy Kaz Dodry and John Schell technically were hanging out with the president, but technically he's a convicted felon, which means you violated the same rule. Right. This can go on and on and on and on and on. And by the way, Eric Adams was shaking hands with Roger Stone in January. So that's another thing that Eric himself will have to answer for. And the police department, because they're saying Sal Greco needs to be fired for being Roger's friend. But, hey, we're hanging out with him now. It's okay. So what was that about? See, these are things that people just want to act like they don't see. But, it doesn't matter what people say. It's going to matter what happens in the courtroom, Eric. That's all that ever matters. The police department never does anything unless it's in front of a judge. That's just the way they operate. That's the way they operate.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to add anything else before we let you go, because I know we've been on for 2 hours already.
I'll just say this. It's a good public service. Like I said, it's hard to get information that's out there to the people in a more raw fashion. Because all too often you have mainstream media or legacy media, I like to call them. They have their own agendas and narratives they're trying to communicate to the public. And oftentimes you don't get the raw versions of things with people, because you get the editorial version as opposed to live things where, see, this is not rehearsed. There's nothing that you're asking me is rehearsed, and I'm certainly not rehearsed. I'm answering things on the fly. And you get more of what is happening, so people can make more informed decisions about how they're being treated, their tax dollars, how public officials are acting, and that includes police officers in this case, since we're talking about a police case, and all these things. So when you go to have discussions about how things are running efficiently, that you're more informed as opposed to being misinformed, which is often what you're going to see in the newspapers. You're going to see the sanitized versions and sound bites. That's what you're going to see. You're not going to see all these other things, because unless someone tells you about the history and these ties with these individuals, you won't know about them because you won't see it in the paper more often than not. So this is a good service. And the thing about it is not Joe Cop, because I've listened to cops talk forever, and you listen to they rationalize shit. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? That sounds crazy. Because why? Because they try to rationalize the BS people half the time. And that's what the public don't deserve that. They deserve to know what the hell is really going on. And believe me, they fought cameras, they fought different things. And believe me, more tools that help you will help people understand what you do and help bridge the gap between the community and the police. But they still have this idea. They think they could BS the public. No, the public sees you all the time. Like I used to tell my partners, I say, we're working at midnight. Wow, it's like there's nobody out here. I said, nobody's out here, but I can guarantee you people are looking at us right now. We just can't see them, right? They're in the windows. They watch you all the time. They know your movements. They know the police better than you do, all right? And the reason how police officers stay safe, because the community keep you safe. You're not keeping yourself safe. Anytime people can ambush cops all day long, they can take advantage of us. They can do all kinds of shit to you. The fact that you can walk into neighborhoods and do all these different things, that's because the overwhelming majority of them know that you're a necessary evil. And all you have to do is work with them. And when you are more transparent, that's when you get more respect from them. Guaranteed.
And that's basically what we all ask for is transparency. I think they want it from all administrations, Trump, Adams, wherever you live right now, your local. You just want transparency because people don't like to be lied to. And that's what's happening now. It's happened with Eric. It's going right now under Trump somehow. You could tell that now there's a misdirection and everything. And he's going down the avenue that you don't want to go down. But I did predict this a long time ago. And unfortunately, it's come around full circle. But and I get these people in the comments are hysterical. Nate H said Sal was using the secret elevator at CTTF and he wouldn't let anyone else use it. They got him. These are the kind of things. Nighthawk said, if the New York Yankees and New York Mets didn't allow their players to frequent Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, why wouldn't NYPD do the same?
Oh, yeah, that was a big thing back in the 90s. That's right.
That's all you need to say. And, again, you have these low information people. You have one in particular. I think this guy probably works in the NYPD or he's Kaz's goon.
But remember, Sal, this person not just making this comment. There was a New Yorker magazine that discussed that whole issue. There was an actual memorandum from the Major League Baseball saying that players are not allowed to go there. See, this is what I'm saying. Evidence, not just feelings. Where did they get that from? You can look it up. Google it. You can find the article.
There was the Washington Post.
That's right.
The New York Daily News, the New York Post, the New York Magazine, and then Jimmy himself always tells that story on every podcast. But yet, then he talks about having NYPD guys as security. So when you talk about having security, maybe you need to ask the NYPD, well, why are you doing security for this guy? Because that's what he's claiming all over the shows he does.
Yeah, and that would be two problems. Besides his background, there's no such thing as securities in bars and nightclubs. The police officers are not allowed to do that. They're precluded from doing that. In other states, in Virginia, and these different places, you see cops work in nightclubs and bars. Not New York. No. ABC laws, conflict.
And what they actually claimed with me was that I was not just armed security; it was uncompensated.
Oh yeah, that too. but listen, but Sal, the funny thing about it, I remember we appeared before Judge Block when I first got in front of him. He said, "So what?" That's the first thing he said. So what? But I can go even further. If you go back in history and look at all these politicians, including the civil rights movement, and you look at those people around him, you could find NYPD Guardian people back from the 60s around Martin Luther King. So this whole thing with security and politicians and what you do in your off-duty time, it's always been allowed under the First Amendment. So I don't know why it should have been any different for you, even if you were doing it, because that's what the judge said. He goes, so what? So what he did security? So what? That's what he said. So what?
Yeah, Nighthawk said the right thing here too. Wasn't Adams doing private security for Mike Tyson and Louis Farrakhan?
Yeah, that's where I had a bone of contention with him and the crew. That's before they became 100 Blacks in law enforcement. I had a lot to say about that because I already knew that was a violation of department policy. But they were transit, a bunch of them were transit guardians, and then they had correction guardians, some other things. See, I told you, institutional knowledge.
Okay, Rob Lukash says all of us carrying off duty is uncompensated security.
That's true. That's true.
And Nighthawk said while he was running 100 blacks in law enforcement. Yeah, he's right. That's when he was doing that. He did that with Farrakhan, who doesn't represent the values of the police department nor the guardians themselves, but or 100 blacks in law enforcement. I don't know how he got away with that. He wants to now act like he's for the Jewish community. Eric Adams has been buddying up to this anti-Semite. He was actually running against one of his candidates. He was trying to run anyway as a police officer. Just so people don't even know. They don't go back and research anything. You have low information people like this Juju guy who just parrots whatever Kaz, whoever's in his ear. Say this, say this, say this. Juju, he's the bottom line, pal. The courts are going to see things a lot differently than you, and so will jurors. You, my friend, are going down December 31st when your buddy is getting kicked out of office once and for all. So then we don't know what's going to happen with you. But there'll be plenty of material here because this will be a gift that keeps on giving, unfortunately, to the New York City taxpayers, including Mr. Juju, who's going to be paying for the damages left behind by his idols, Kaz Dardry, John Schell, Jeffrey Madry, Eddie Caban, and Eric Adams. So
you got to add in NYPD savior Jessica Sarah Tisch.
I forgot about her. Yeah, the soccer mom. So Eric, I know people could go to SandersFirmPC.com to reach out to you. Also, you have Twitter too, right? You have X.
Yeah, I have Esquire. I don't know what the hell is. I don't even know. Let's see, Esquire Eric Sanders or something. Yeah, you can find me. But the bottom line is, I don't self promote. Honestly, I really don't do it. You can find me. But really, if you go on my website, the most important thing to do is I try to give a lot of information to the public about a lot of different things, sexual harassment, all kinds of rules. I talk about a lot of different things. And the whole idea is that I think a consumer, because the consumer is the boss, should be informed before you decide you're going to hire a lawyer. And one of the ways you do it is to give them a lot of information. Just don't go to a lawyer and sit down and let them tell you anything. If you go before them, you should have an idea what sexual harassment is, what a labor law violation is, what a 1983 case is. You don't need a notice of claim for 1983, all that kind of stuff. And this is why I do it. Just do it for a small guy.
And
I'm supposed to be relaxing now, but I haven't left anywhere yet.
Well, there's a lot of material. There's so much going on. But I'd like to thank you for coming on, clarifying not only your positions with things, but bringing us up to date on other lawsuits. And, of course, with Epps, what's going on there. People are still waiting for that lawsuit to drop. And my own case, which people will realize that it's very important because my case connects with all these other cases, which now can be used to try to say, well, the only person that really could talk about this is Keishant Sewell herself. So we're about to.
One last thing I want to say about, since you told my case, I'm going to go back to your case for a minute. I remember when we first got it, it was kind of moving slow. And you know what? Sometimes, and the same thing I told with Epps, and I call it Q, sometimes taking it slow works out better than if you do it fast. Because we learn more about things that can help your case by these delays that the city was doing on purpose, by the way, than if we went through discovery fast. So sometimes it's better to go slow.
It is. And actually now we find out that what you thought was worth such an amount is now going to be worth a lot more. And the more the delays come, the more the price tag has gone up. Because trust me, the city may not want to go to an actual trial where I don't know how this is going to sound when all of this stuff is presented to a jury and a judge who's going to look at this and go, oh, my God, I can't believe this is what these people were doing. And it's all these lawsuits combined. So, again, I'll be waiting to see what these people are going to say. And I'm really anxious to hear what Sewell is going to say. Because everyone has it down.
And you guys keep on watching because, I'm sure there's going to be some things coming out about those 30 some odd probationary police officers. Those are going to be cases. And I'm pretty certain that Terrell Anderson is going to come out live. And when you hear the versions from him, I'm sure it's going to be a lot different than the PR spins that are out there in the public. I don't know.
Or the fact that
I just kind of guessed that. I don't know.
Yeah, like the fact that maybe he doesn't have as much of a say in this as people have let on, and that there might be a secret panel behind the scenes that do everything. But that's a story for another time, or maybe hopefully a future appearance coming on the show by you in regards to that. Okay. Thanks a lot, Eric. You have a good rest of your day, and also have a great weekend, and we'll be talking soon.
Take it easy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. There was Eric Sanders, the great Eric Sanders, who basically laid everything out for you guys. There's so much stuff, and there's so many lawsuits, and you really need to read between the lines. I can't help the low information people that'll be gone December 31st of this year with Eric Adams, but I know plenty of you out there that actually watch. The 90% of you, 99% of you that are watching this to be informed, you are, paying attention to what's being said here. So with that being said, I know producer Jack has been raring to go back there after all this stuff you've been hearing. So, Jack, what do you got for us today?
We'll get into my real producers take in a second, but before I go any further, Eric Sanders did a fantastic job talking about the media twist and the spin they've put on everything. So I went back and did a little bit of research, and for Throwback Thursday, 2 years ago today, almost at the exact same time, right? Because it's 3:20 Eastern here, and this article was released at 5:20 Eastern on July 17th, 2023. NBC puts out an article announcing that Edward Caban will be the new police commissioner. And the way they frame it is that he's going to be the first Latino to ever lead the department. I didn't see anything in this article about how he had failed the sergeant exam, how he had relationships with officers who were beneath him. At one point, he stole a department vehicle and drove all the way to Maine, Pennsylvania, somewhere like that. He was docked 20 vacation days for that. There's another situation where he had suspicion that another officer was having sex with his girlfriend, and to retaliate against him, he ordered no backup for this officer whenever he was encountering issues in a dangerous neighborhood. So it's kind of sad that the media sold themselves out and didn't discuss the lack of integrity that the new commissioner, who had been promoted up like 6 or 7 levels or something like that, had. And as a result, he only lasted in the position for about a year. Once he was dismissed, we were all asking ourselves why we didn't hear more about this sooner. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's because they needed him in that position because he was the perfect rubber stamp. And also that connection he had because his brother is the alleged owner of Con Sofrito, and they all, Wendy Garcia, Madry, Daughtry, Pearson, Banks, Eric, they're all hanging out over there. The Hispanic Society, which is his side hustle caban there, where all his buddies entrenched there. So that right there was the reason why they wanted he had to be put in charge because they needed someone who's part of that crew. They combined Crumbs and Con Sofrito to make it that, and that's what you got. And they just, he's so great. He can't even speak publicly. You ever heard Eddie Caban speak? I don't know. The police department, dude, at least, that is when you talk about who they hire and who they put in charge and everything, there's the poster child of how everything would go wrong. Clearly unqualified, should have been terminated off the job a long time ago, should have been investigated for his connections to Jimmy Rodriguez and whatever the hell he was doing for not just recently. You're going to go back to he got on the job because they were buddies growing up. So there's a lot more that people don't know that I know. And there's so much there, but yet he was propped up and everyone just knew it was going to be a train wreck. But that's Eric Adams' administration. It's a slow motion train wreck. Today, up until today, it's a slow motion train wreck or a clown car with all the clowns falling out as the car's driving and the wheels are coming off. And that's what's going on. It's been going on since the day he got in office.
Yeah, and that article also did not include that his brother, the slumlord who a lot of people are referring to in the comments.
Oh, yeah.
He wrongfully detained a taxi driver back in 2013 because he thought the taxi driver had incorrectly charged his wife. That claim was unsubstantiated. So he wrongfully detained this guy for something that he never did. His brother was later named to be one of the worst slumlords in New York City by Mayor Bill de Blasio. And Edward Caban was also generally very involved in the operation, and we didn't hear anything about that either. So that whole situation was totally ridiculous. But what I really wanted to talk about today, we're going to go back and revisit the clout chaser ball, if you want to.
Yeah.
That's my nickname for it, because I think that Eric Adams, and I wrote about this earlier, Eric Adams is kind of like a little bit of a lost dog politically right now. And he's created a ton of divide within the Republican Party in Florida, and especially South Florida as a whole. But I want to draw a parallel line for a second, because Dean Trantalis, the mayor of Fort Lauderdale, also has a reputation for hating the police. Remember, back when he was campaigning for mayor, he had an 18-year-old campaign worker, Elijah Manley, who went and destroyed a sign for his opponent, Bruce Roberts. And when Manley was arrested by the police, Trantalis came out and made a statement that it was totally politically motivated. The Fort Lauderdale Police Department has about 500 people in the department, so this became like a very tension-laden issue. And then also, there was a policy in Broward County against feeding homeless people because they were trying to cut down on homeless populations in that region specifically. There was a 90-something-year-old person arrested for feeding a homeless person. He disowned the arrest. He said he's not going to enforce this policy anymore. He told the police, you're not allowed to do that. The state overrode him. It was a big back and forth, but we're starting to see similarities, right? He likes the homeless people. He tries to demonize the police. He claims to be a Democrat, and he also demonized Donald Trump supporters because when he was going to the polls during the 2020 election during COVID, he said that he was hearing homophobic slurs. He is openly gay. He was hearing homophobic slurs from Trump supporters. So he demonizes Republicans. He's pretty much the same person as Eric Adams. And when Eric Adams is in his backyard hosting an event, bringing all the big name people from Las Olas and Fort Lauderdale into his inner circle, we hear absolutely nothing from Trantalis. I just found that to be a little bit suspicious.
I definitely would say so. The comments are hysterical. That was the point. Nate H says that was the point. They thought he wouldn't see anything. That's I think they were trying to put this up to act like they were never going to see this. Special Hagen said Adams is desperate to stay around the wealthy. He's campaigning for his next do-nothing job. His next job should be cleaning or being the sweeper of a prison cell. You can thank Emo Bove, who today snuck through when he shouldn't have, for letting him off the hook, and Trump, who's really the man behind that. And you're now seeing that the Epstein thing also, Trump is the one behind that as well, telling them what to say. And I understand. I'm not ever saying Trump was involved with Epstein. I don't think he has anything to do with that stuff. But clearly, there's protecting someone. I don't know who, what, how many people, why. That's the big what ifs with that. But it all ties in again when it goes back to the same thing, the same people in the same circles. The Southern District of New York, Eric Adams. You just heard today a lot of stuff. I don't know if you have any take on it. It's pretty wild what the police department has been doing for many decades. But now, in particular with this, we also heard about these bombshell allegations and lawsuits with Donlin and the Chiefs last week. And it's just like, what's next? What's next?
So with Adams, I think we're starting to learn that status and prestige is a lot more important than political affiliation, because all of the people who went to this event, I went and kind of talked to some of the people in and around the situation. I would estimate about 50% of them, you guys are going to be shocked to learn this, 50% of the people who attended did not even know that Eric Adams was running for mayor as independent. Like, they just heard a mayor from New York City who's affiliated with Donald Trump is coming, so we're all going to get behind him and support him. But it's also like this industry affiliation. I know one woman from Palm Beach Gardens who was at this event. She's prominent in the cryptocurrency world. She's a very hardcore Republican, but she started talking to Mayor Adams about his involvement with the Las Vegas convention he was at a couple weeks ago, and they started going back and forth about crypto. Dean Trantalis, the mayor that I was just mentioning, he's a former real estate lawyer. There were real estate people from Las Olas all over that event. Tony Delgado, the founder of Latino Wall Street, he was also there. And Delgado, ironically enough, after the event, decides to put out this tweet that he's no longer a Republican and he's officially an independent because he's a hashtag America First and a release the list guy. Interesting. That's ironic timing. So it's like everyone's kind of putting this Republican affiliation on the back burner to try and get their interests advanced forward by Eric Adams, whether it be in the crypto world or real estate. Like he's there promising them, I'm going to give you guys lenient rules. I'm going to rub your back. And it's still ironic to me that he didn't go to Palm Beach Island to visit Donald Trump. He didn't go to Miami, which is the most widely known city within the metropolitan South Florida area. It's pretty much the Manhattan equivalent, right? So he strategically picked Las Olas, the Fort Lauderdale Young Republicans, people in crypto, people in real estate. There was a former Florida Panthers dancer who has 13,500 followers on Instagram there that he took photos with. So this was total clout chasing. We don't care about political affiliation. We're going to try and force you into office. Meanwhile, this is the craziest part of the entire situation. The most recent poll that was released by Harris X has Adams in 4th place with 13% of the vote. We all know that Mamdani, Cuomo, and Sliwa are all within 5 percentage points of one another, so they're effectively in a tie. But Adams is polling in at about 13%, and he's trying to get reelected by people who live in another state because he already made the rounds in the Hamptons a week earlier. He went to the officials, he talked to John Katzimatidis, went on the WABC bus, and there's nobody in New York City aside from the union leaders he went to today to support him anymore, so he had to come down here to Fort Lauderdale to get support. It's absolutely disgusting.
Or money, because he has no money.
Yeah, his hand. I was told his hand was literally like out like this. Like he was literally like asking for money from people and like guaranteeing that he was going to win too, not to listen to anyone or anything.
Yeah, this guy is, and this guy Juju's losing it in the comments, buddy. Your buddy Kaz Daughtry. You want to know who's defined as MAGA? Your buddy Kaz Daughtry and John Shell that were associating with him, pictured with President Trump. Not even I have been pictured around the guy. So, Juju, you need to I don't know, your brain needs to be examined. I don't know. You claim you like soccer. Maybe you hit too many of the balls off your head. I don't know, because you're running wild. Your interference campaign is not working. Your boys are all going down. If they're associated with Trump, he's dropping like a rock as well. Anything Eric Adams touches turns to what? I mean, I need to fill in the blank, but that's essentially what you and your crew is going to do.
His largest matching funds contribution came from Fort Lauderdale, not New York so far. His top two matching fund contributions, and you can verify this information, by the way, with the Campaign Finance Board.
I want this up on the board. All these people from Fort Lauderdale, alleged Republicans, a bunch of phonies, a bunch of fugazis. You run around. It's a complete clout. It was a disgraceful clout chasing event for a guy who's not even a Republican. You can't be a Republican and go for a Democrat that's hates, who's basically trying to imprison and destroy the lives of people that voted for Trump. But heck, Trump even turned on his own supporters. Now he likes a guy like Juju who just showed up to the scene. He'll say, oh yeah, Trump is the great. All of a sudden, all those guys that 10 years ago risked everything, lost everything because they supported this guy. He now just wants a guy like Juju. Low information, easy to control. That's the name of the game with this guy. Maybe he's behind that bot guy on X. There's a bot guy on X that's doing that stuff.
Ironically enough, I was told that following Eric Adams, a mayor who lives 1,200 miles away in a city that most of these people have never been to, have only been to Times Square like once or twice, I was told throwing your support behind him is like being a LeBron James fan in basketball. That was like you probably would have paid to have seen my reaction to that comment. I was like, whoa. What do you mean that's like being a LeBron James fan? That's more like supporting Delonte West when he was on the Celtics, went broke and was out on the street. And then you said, no, you can have a tryout with the Cavaliers to ride the bench because you're going through tough times. That's the whole situation with Eric Adams. He's like a lost dog right now, and he's going to people who don't know about his past so he can reinvent himself with them. And eventually he's going to find his way into the real estate world or into that circle somehow. He always gravitates toward those people, whether it's as a state senator, the borough president of Brooklyn, where he built all those new developments on Flatbush Avenue. He's king at finding the next spot where he can kind of materialize in through osmosis, and it's no different down here, sadly.
Marlon said it best. It's like being a LeBron fan. They are both delusional.
Good point by Marlon. I really don't see the nature of that analogy, especially like I talked to the political director of said group off the record, of course. I'm like, aren't you guys supposed to be supporting Republicans? And they said that one hand washes the other, and getting Eric Adams back in office is going to help advance all of their interests down here. And then they're going to start supporting Eric Adams. I mean, it's the thought process and logic behind this is totally mind boggling. I don't pretend to understand it for a second, but it all proves the point that special interests and real estate, all these big agencies, I mean, listen, politics just goes by the wayside when all of this stuff is involved in the situation. It rises to the top like ice in a drink.
Yeah. So tomorrow, what we got tomorrow at 8:05, I'm sure everyone wants to hear the John and Eric and Marlon, right? That's tomorrow.
Yeah, we have the New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast roundtable, where Eric Dim has informed me there's going to be an on-deck circle with all of the pieces that are going to be flowing in and out. I don't know if that's true or false, but like everyone involved in our platform has very intimate knowledge about what's going on with the police department in some form or fashion. Even with me having not been in the police department ever, I still know about the lawsuits that have come down, the various union endorsements, all that stuff. I mean, there's so much information to unpack, including what took place as we were on the air today at City Hall. So yeah, there's going to be spicy takes, and the headlines for this show sadly write themselves. We don't want to be talking about these things, but when they inevitably pop up, we have to discuss them.
I have no choice. I will tell you this, tomorrow night, Jack, I will be at Lone Depot Park. So I'll be watching the Marlins and the Royals. All of a sudden, the Marlins are hot, my friend. They're hot. So
yeah, first game after the All-Star break. But I will say, I don't know if there's more people at a Marlins game or at the Jupiter Hammerheads games by me. They're the single A affiliate for the Marlins, and they have all types of Taco Tuesdays and Frisky Friday. That's not actually what it's called, but like events for all of the weekend and stuff. Apparently, like the Marlins are trying to now profit off their minor league teams, which also includes the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. So it's an interesting dilemma. I'm curious to see how this all evolves with Major League Baseball, because we all know teams in cities like Denver and Miami should be big time showcases and draws for various audiences, but they're not performing on the field, and the residual effect has radiated down to the audience as well.
yeah. So I guess that's what's coming up. Thanks, Jack. Marlon said this best preview here. Hey, Eric, he means Adams. Jessica, he means Tish. Tell your people it's going to be a spicy show tomorrow. I say tomorrow will be a can't miss. I don't know what kind of stuff's going to be, put up on the screen. I'm sure there's plenty of evidence of stuff. So that's it. Barb Blue Cash, RMS Titanic, a.k.a. NYPD. So at 8:05 in the morning tomorrow, don't miss the finest unfiltered right here, right on this YouTube, X, Facebook, on all platforms. Just put on the finest unfiltered. You're going to see a can't miss show, kind of like what we try to put on today. I think Eric Sanders was excellent in a lot of his analysis details, certain cases that he also has. I'm sure I try to inform you as best as I could. I can't help one individual in particular who's, I don't know, I think he's hit his head on too many soccer balls, if you ask me. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for all the comments. Guys, if you can, also go back and watch the Executive Perspective from yesterday. And also, if you can, the 10-4 Tavern, which is on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Executive Perspective's on at 5:05 every Wednesday. And, of course, tomorrow, don't miss the finest unfiltered. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for all the comments, even the low information people. And things are going to get interesting. For folks out in Florida, I'll see you at the game tomorrow for the Marlins. Even though I'm a Met fan, I'm not, full disclosure, I love the Mets, but the Marlins do have a great atmosphere to go to. So, of course, we're going to end the show with your favorite esteemed mayor and his deluded vision of the world. So we're signing off from South Florida, which is a sunny place for shady people.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?